Guess so, yeah.
Oh, hold on. He's just setting up the video thing.
Okay.
Okay, we set, Jamel? Yeah? Okay. You guys ready?
Uh-huh.
Here they come.
You think I'm gonna get in trouble?
Take
Yes.
your mask off now.
Yeah.
Fun's
Take it off.
time. Fun's over.
That's the thing. This one's scarier.
All right, Jana, are we all set to go?
You all set, Jamel? Yes, we're all set with
All
the
set to go?
technical equipment. Yes.
Excellent. Well, welcome.
Hold on. Janelle has a question. I'm sorry. Oh, she must be muted.
Thanks. I was just muted. I couldn't
Okay.
unmute myself. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. I see a number of board members are muted, so we'll save that for later when I'm tired of hearing from them. Welcome to everyone. I'll call this meeting in order to the regular meeting of the Planning Board of the City of Birmingham for Wednesday, October 28th, 2020. Could we please call the roll?
Scott Klein,
Present.
Robin Boyle,
Here.
Stuart Jeffries. Stuart
Oh,
Jeffries.
Stuart is muted. Hold on. Okay, try now, Stuart.
Here.
Bert Kosek,
Here.
Daniel Scher,
Here, but do we have to identify the city and county we're in under the new regime?
Yes, we do. I'm sorry. I should have
Oh,
mentioned
sure
that
do.
at the
I'll start over. Scott Klein,
Present.
Scott, you need to say, yes, you're here in Birmingham, Michigan, if that's
Yes,
where
I
you
am.
are.
Yes, I am here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Robin Boyle,
Yes, I'm here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes, I'm here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Bert Kosek.
Bert Kosek, Birmingham, Michigan.
Great. Daniel Scher,
Here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Brian Williams,
Here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
Here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Jason Emron.
Jason and Nassim are muted.
Okay.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Nassim Ramin,
Here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Rachel Hester, June Lee. All right.
Wonderful. We are quiet, though that did feel oddly like a game to tell the truth. Could we please move to the review and approval of the minutes from the meeting on September 23rd? Are there any comments or revisions? I don't see any hands going up. I did find one, believe it or not. It was on page 3 of the minutes, which I believe is page
5.
5 of the packet. Second paragraph from the end, it's my comment where I say, he said that if the use were to change, only attendant changes to the exterior would require further board review. I'm not quite sure what that even means. I think the word is probably just a typo, but I would strike attendant.
Well, attendant means related or correlated. So if that's not what you meant.
That's not really what I meant. I just,
Okay.
Okay,
Are there-
what page are you on? Because I am not.
It's page 5 of the packet, page 3 of the minutes. The second to last
Oh,
paragraph
okay.
that begins in reply to Mr. Marcus.
Okay, got it. And so what do you want to change to? He
I
said
think
that
the
if
word-
the
I
use
think-
were to change.
The word attendant should just be stricken.
Okay,
Any other changes or revisions? Seeing no hands, do I have a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to accept the minutes?
Motion by Mr. Boyle. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kozik. Any conversation? Could we please call the roll?
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Daniel Scher,
Yes,
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
I abstain.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So moving along, chairperson's comments. We are actually, again, holding these meetings in a virtual space. Thank you for indulging us last time when we had to cancel our meeting due to legislative changes. This meeting is being held under the newly minted and enacted legislation in the state of Michigan. We will endeavor to conduct ourselves as normal. I will say, from a bit of housekeeping, there will be opportunity for the public to provide input on every topic. I will call out that moment when I'm going to open the floor to the public, so please do not try and jump in otherwise. When you do, I will ask the public to, before this comment, what I would ask you to do is use on the Zoom at the bottom in the middle, the raise your hand function in the command console. If you're familiar with Zoom, if you do that, I have a list of participants and we will call your name off. When I call your name and or your phone number, if you could please identify yourself and your address for the record, and then provide your brief comments. And again, just ask that you make sure that they are brief in order to ensure everybody gets an opportunity. And as you heard earlier, all votes will be roll call to ensure an accuracy of the record. Gianna, are there any changes to the agenda? Gianna?
Oh, I'm here. I couldn't get my cursor to unmute myself. Sorry. Okay. The only change is the one that you can see that's written on the meeting agenda, which is with regards to Jack's Car Wash at 34745 Woodward. They have requested a postponement to a future meeting. But I guess that's not really a change since
Not really a change. Well, let's dive right into that. Unfinished business number one, Jack's Car Wash at 34745 Woodward. Clearly, they did not provide the information needed in order to move forward with a review. Board, my recommendation is simply to just postpone them, but to do so to no date certain. That will allow them to get back in line when they have all of their information put forth, and they'll come up when they come up once they've got everything completed. Is there conversation at the board level, or is there someone interested in a motion? Mr. Chair?
I'll move to adjourn the matter with that address, sine die, as we say in the law, without date.
We have a motion by Mr. Chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Boyle. Any conversation on the motion? Could Mr. Williams be unmuted, please?
If we're not adjourning to a date certain, what is the effect of what we're doing? We're putting them back in the back of the line, right? So they won't have any priority.
They would have to get back in the queue. That's correct.
Correct. I think the only thing we're really doing is not forcing them to repay a fee and submit an application.
Okay, I understand.
Any other comments or discussion at the board level? Mr. Kozak?
Yeah, just to be clear, I mean, it's been several months, I think, since we
Yes.
saw them, or maybe even longer. And so I don't think it's just some additional information or missing information. I think the whole thing is sort of under consideration. So.
Fair enough.
All right. With that, I will open it up to the public quickly. Is there anyone in the public that has any comments on this motion? If so, please use the raise your hand function. Do not see comments. So we will bring it back. Could we please call the roll?
Sorry, I was inadvertently muted. Robin? So sorry. Who made the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And the second was?
Mr. Boyle?
Okay. Daniel Scher?
Yes.
Robin Boyle?
Yes.
Scott Klein?
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries?
Yes.
Bert Kosick?
Yes.
Brian Williams?
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce?
Yes.
All right.
All right, motion unanimous. Thank you. So let's move along to, we have a rezoning application, 566 Ann Street, the Roby Law Building, requesting to be rezoned from R3 Single Family Residential to TZ2 Transitional Zoning. Nick, I think you're doing this one.
That's right. All right, I'm gonna share my screen just to give you all something better to look at than me. All right. So thanks, Mr. Chairman Klein. I've got a rezoning application, 566 Ann Street. As you mentioned, currently in the R3 zoning district, it's a single family style dwelling that is currently used as an office for the Roby Law Firm. We've found that this use, although office use is not permitted in R3, that this is very likely legal non-conforming. Some of the zoning history will explain that when I get to that section. This rezoning request was made somewhat unusually in my experience, not for a redevelopment proposal. Rather, they'd like to build upon their current solar carport and extend it roughly 375 square feet, where the first installation is 440 square feet. They appear to have a major commitment to solar, as they've got panels all over the rooftop as well. So the impetus for this is just to build upon that solar strategy. Zoning history, as I mentioned, the most clear zoning map, clearly the most recent zoning map that came to R3 was in 1987, when the property was indeed switched to R3. I mentioned that we saw some maps from the 60s where that particular zone was a general business zone. That's where we feel it may have started to be used as an office potentially. Other than that, it's unclear as to how it became an office, but nevertheless, it's been R3 since at least 1987. The rezoning requirements in part require an explanation from the applicant on three major things. One, why the rezoning is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the rights of usage commonly associated with property ownership. The applicant has stated that they feel a significant part of property ownership is the right to enjoyment of the property and a voluntary responsibility to further enhance the environment, the neighborhood, and the Birmingham community at large. The property owner takes the enjoyment and the responsibility aspects seriously, and would like to install those solar panels to further offset electric use and reduce its carbon footprint. They feel the current R3 zoning for the subject property has limited the size of that solar canopy and has thus prevented him from enjoying his property to the fullest. They believe that the TZ2 rezoning will allow the property owner to add additional solar panels, but also to provide an amenity for his guests and his employees. The second explanation that's required is why the existing zoning classification is no longer appropriate. The applicant has stated that the current R3 zoning has limited the size of their canopy that they have currently to roughly 500 square feet. And as a result, the property owner, Mr. Roby, is unable to offset 100% of his electric usage by solar sources. They feel the TZ2 zoning will allow the property owner to add those solar panels and reduce his footprint and get him closer to that 100%, thus being able to enjoy his property to the fullest. Finally, the last explanation that we ask for from the applicant is why the proposed rezoning will not be detrimental to surrounding properties, in which they have said that the zoning change requested from R3 to TZ2 allows for the use of the premises as a law firm, as it currently is. Additionally, there's also an existing TZ zone property in the vicinity at the southeast corner of Frank and Ann Street. So they feel that the continuing nature of usage of this property as a law firm has no foreseen impacts to those surrounding properties. A couple more requirements of the rezoning application. We require a plot plan showing the general plan for ordinarily a redevelopment, but in this case, the solar array, which I've shown you here. I just like to draw, so I'm just going to draw for those at home. This is the existing in red. And in blue here is what they're proposing to add. So they've currently got 3 spaces covered. They'd like to have 5 or 6. So they provided this plan. There's 11 requirements for this plan. They've met the majority of them. I mentioned that points number 3 and 4 for a little bit more of the surrounding property information isn't present on this, but that type of stuff is readily available to us in the planning division. All that being said, the planning board's job today is to make findings based on the evidence presented with respect to the following matters. 1, the objectives of the city's then current master plan and the city's 2016 plan. 2, the existing uses of property within the general area of the subject site. 3, the zoning classification of property within the general area of the subject site. 4, the suitability of the property in question to the uses permitted under the existing zoning classification. And finally, the trend of development in the general area of the subject site, including any changes which have taken place in the zoning classification. So we did a little analysis. The analysis of the city's current master plan and then the 2016 plan. This first section here to put this through an analysis based on the city's current master plan, land use plan. We've got to go back to the 1980 Birmingham plan. So as I mentioned, as a result of that 1980 plan, in 1987, the site was rezoned or classified as R3, single family residential. So most of the recommendations in the 1980 plan, as I'll call it, follow suit. The future land use map considers it a single family residential zone. It's got some general business to the north and east, but generally the area and surrounding area, especially to the south and southwest, are all R3. So although that use has been in office for some time, the building scale and disposition does remain congruent with that R3 zoning district. This comports with the residential development policies outlined in the 1980 plan. Policy 1, to summarize, the city's basic single-family residential character should be preserved. And policy 3, that the city planning board, city planning board and city administration should pay particular attention to sensitive residential areas to ensure their continued stability or improvement. I just mentioned, because the building has been used as an office for so long, policy 4 of the plan in the commercial section may also apply, that whenever possible, commercial areas in close proximity to residential development should be restricted to office and low intensity commercial uses. So we summarize on the surface, the applicant's request for rezoning in terms of the 1980 plan from R3 to TZ2 does not necessarily meet the spirit and the intent of the 1980 plan. However, based on the applicant's desire to continue using the property as is and simply adding an additional solar carport, would suggest that a rezoning would maintain that single family residential character that the 1980 plan recommended. Moving on to the 2016 plan, simply put, it is not in the downtown overlay. So the downtown Birmingham 2016 plan does not apply, although I'd like to at least mention that the downtown overlay district, specifically the D2 overlay zone, is right across the street to the east, across Ann Street. So since we're kind of in a weird time with our future master plan, the Birmingham Plan 2040, we thought it was at least worthwhile to run it through that master plan as well, just to see what kind of things come out of the end. We found that the property could be identified in the future city structure section of the 2040 plan, which is as close as that plan gets right now to a future land use map. In that structure plan, it recommends the property and the surrounding area for use as a high-intensity neighborhood seam because of its location next to a commercial area, specifically the downtown commercial area. They kind of compare that high-intensity commercial seam, they say in the plan, to the TZ3 zoning district, which is a higher intensity district than what's proposed for TZ2. And just to say, in the neighborhood plan, this belongs in the Barnum Park area. There are other elements of the 2040 plan aside from future land use that relate to this request and to the subject property. The discussion of future resilience and the principle that Birmingham should reduce the broader environmental impact of its home, businesses, transportation systems, and municipal operations. It's directly related. We think that both the retention of the building that is almost 200 years old by the time the 2040 plan gets rolling, coupled with the addition of more solar panels and alternative energy options are hallmark examples of resiliency. The recommendation in the neighborhood component section also offer insight to this property. The 2040 plan includes provisions to reduce the impacts of new construction and to promote the retention of sturdy and functional homes, including preservation tactics such as historical designations for landmark buildings. We note that, again, just to say, the 2040 plan is in draft form, but the implications are significant, we feel. The rezoning proposal from R3 to TZ2 would seem to bring the property closer to the form that's currently suggested in the 2040 plan. However, even though the current proposal has not been submitted with the intent to redevelop, the potential for future redevelopment, we feel, cannot go ignored. At present, the TZ2 zoning district allows for a range of uses from single family to commercial. In the future, if the high intensity seam concept that the 2040 plan seems to propose, the use intensity would be even higher. So we feel that this might endanger both the building, which is really quite a building, to also the R3 single family zoning district. The second point here, we need to analyze the existing uses of property within the general area. As I mentioned before, aside from the commercial areas to the north and east, the entire southwest area is all R3 zoning, single family zoning. They were correct. There is a TZ1 zone property at the development at 420 East Frank for a multifamily development. 3, the zoning classification follows, like I said, R3 mostly. There's a B2B zoning district to the east, D2 overlay to the east. 4, the suitability of the property in question to the uses permitted under the existing zoning. Excuse me. As I mentioned before, the office is not not a permitted use. There are no commercial permitted uses in the R3 zoning district. But if the rezoning were to be recommended for approval, the office would then fit as a commercial permitted use now in the TZ2 zoning district, if you were to so choose. It also seems to meet the general intent of the TZ2 zoning ordinance, which I've listed in your report. There's several things. I won't read them to you. And we thought it was important that at least, inform and it's the building's disposition, it would still resemble the single family zone in which it's located. The addition of the solar canopy doesn't seem to change that much. And finally, the trend of development. It's been kind of stagnant over there. I noted there are a few new homes that were built in the last 20 years, but there are also a bunch of homes that appear to be untouched or touched very little. And there's a new building kind of kitty-corner to that, the Forefront building at 400 South Old Woodward. And then the only other one that's relatively new is that building, the TZ1 zone building at 420 East Frank that I mentioned. No other city departments seem to have any comments at this time, not surprisingly either. Moving on to the recommendation, the review of the 1980 plan and the 2040 plan kind of provide a mixed analysis on the appropriateness of the rezoning. The whole residential aspect and form of the building seems to conform with the 2080 plan, but the property's use as an office forces that conversation when you're talking 1980 plan to form only, as it is an office and it's legal nonconforming. These policies seem to conflict with what the 2040 plan is proposing for a high intensity seam. The feel would be much different there if we were, again, the 2040 plan is only a draft, but if that zone were to be a high intensity seam, it would be much different than the current R3 zoning district in terms of feel. We thought it was also important, we couldn't ignore that the building on site, it's a pristine example of Second Empire architecture that was built in 1882. The HD DRC at that time yielded a really good description of that property. They studied it for designation criteria. They feel that it was very significant and embodies the distinctive characteristics of the Second Empire. There's a little history with that in the Peabody Mansion. You can kind of see it's kind of got a similar feel to it. They think it might have been built as a scaled down version of exactly that, which is the Peabody Mansion is a dacha restaurant on the corner of Brown and South Old Woodward, one of our most significant historic buildings. And it's important to note that because one, although the rezoning application has not been submitted with the intent to redevelop, it can be assumed that the property owner would like to keep this valuable historic resource as is for some time into the foreseeable future. However, shall either the current owner's preferences change or should the building be sold, the rezoning to TZ2 could bring the building closer to the high intensity neighborhood seam concept and would appear to further endanger it. Speaking candidly, it's already endangered, not being locally or nationally designated at this time. So there's no protections in place for that building. But all that being said, we feel our recommendation to you at this time is to recommend approval to the City Commission, the rezoning for 566 Ann Street from R3 to TZ2 in the zoning ordinance. Mr. Klein, I hand the old baton back to you. Available for questions, and I'm curious to hear what you all have to say.
Yes, and Nick, there will be a lot to say. Let's unpack that. Board, are there any questions first for Nick on the report itself? I'm not seeing any hands go up. So therefore, let me ask: is the applicant present? Jana, is the applicant present?
Oh, sorry, Jana, for interrupting.
No, go ahead.
But I've got Sachit here. It's Nova Consultants Sachit. And I think I've also got Joe Ruffner on too, but Sachit is the main point of contact. Would you like me to unmute him now?
Yes,
or?
Could you please? I'm sorry, I did not see you at the bottom there, Mr. Verma.
Okay. Working on that now.
There you go. Hello, if you could please introduce yourself, and I believe you are an agent of the applicant on this project, correct?
That is correct. My name is Sachit Verma. I'm the program manager here at Nova Consultants in Novi, Michigan. And the applicant, Mr. Roby, has authorized us to file this application on his behalf and address any questions, concerns that the commission might have.
Great. At this time, I guess my question is there anything you would like to add before the board perhaps asks any questions or starts the deliberation? Is there anything that you'd like to make sure that we hear that we haven't as of now?
I certainly appreciate that opportunity. One thing I would certainly like to add is give you a little bit of background of Mr. Roby and his history in Birmingham and the improvements that he's already performed to the property to demonstrate his commitment to that historic building, to that location, and to the city of Birmingham. So Mr. Roby's lived in Birmingham on Henrietta, on Bates, and each home, he's improved it significantly. He purchased this 566 Ad Street property, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago, and he maintained the original character, improved upon the exterior appearance. What he said is it was really falling apart when he bought it. There were 2 separate businesses on 2 floors, and now it's all one law office, the Roby Law Office. He's refurbished the cupola all in copper, and it looks gorgeous now. His son, Anthony, is his partner in the law firm, so both father and son are, it's a family law firm based in Birmingham. They live in Birmingham, so there's no changes anticipated to the property in the foreseeable future. He's made a lot of investment in renewable energy on the rooftop and in the solar carport. He's very, very committed. And with that kind of investment, it's highly unlikely that, he'll want to get rid of the property. So he's very, very committed. He's replaced the sewer lines, interior plumbing, interior and exterior electrical, added insulation, a lot of internal improvements, and everything has always followed the law, all permitted, inspected, approved by building, electrical, fire chiefs, and so forth. They've added a lot of trees, shrubs, perennials in the front, add some trees, and fix the front porch. So the building, if you look at it today versus a few years ago, it is significantly improved while still maintaining the historic character of the building. And I did not know about the National Historic Register, so I will certainly follow up with Nick and Mr. Roby to see, if you would like to add that building and ensure its future preservation. And he said that even now, someone frequently stops by to take a picture of that building, so he's very proud of that, of his office building there, and at the same time would like to look forward to carbon neutral future, reduces carbon footprint. And that's really about it. So I highly appreciate the help from Nick and the reporting that he prepared and presented for this application, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Let's go to the board with any questions, not getting into the details here, but Mr. Kozik, can we unmute Mr. Kozik, please?
There we go. So it's the solar panels that's sort of started this whole thing, Nick?
That is correct. Oh, I'm sorry.
So it is a bit unusual. Are there other options available to them, such as seeking a variance to do that?
Yeah, they could. It'd be for the accessory structure rules. They could seek a variance for those, for relief from those rules.
So I haven't formulated an opinion yet, but your reference to the 2040 plan and things like that, I think are probably not appropriate. It hasn't been through planning board or city commission or public input. Just graphically, it looks a little bit weird, and just looking at the zoning map, it seems a bit out of place. Not that dictates necessarily what's appropriate or not, but I just wondered, were there other avenues? It's clearly, putting on my zoning board of appeals hat from years ago, it's clearly a unique piece of property and has a unique history, and I think there are lots of arguments to be made, that might warrant that something like this might might circumvent a variance, but just seems like an unusual path to get that going.
Mr. Verma, is there a reason why you haven't sought a variance and why you're seeking a rezoning at this time?
To be honest with you, we're agnostic. We weren't sure which should be the right pathway and which pathway would have a higher chance of success. We had to pick one based on conversations, that we had some of the city personnel. We thought this might be the better way, but if you feel that variance is the way to go, then we'll certainly try for that. But the overall objective is not redevelopment, but to increase the size of that canopy that you see over there. And we were told that it's usually difficult to get a variance to setbacks rather than this rezoning to transition for this purpose, especially since we're not asking for any redevelopment.
All right, other board members. I think I saw Ms. Whipplevoice. Did you have your hand up?
I did, and I had the exact same question as Bert. So
Okay.
I have my answer. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's go to Mr. Williams. Could we unmute him, please? There you go, Mr. Williams, please.
Well, I agree with Bert. I think it's not appropriate to discuss the 2040 plan. My guess is that particularly this neighborhood in question is going to have a lot of comments on seams and the other designations we want to make. So I don't even want to go there. But I do think this is, there are only two routes in my judgment to go. One is to go the route of variance, as Bert has suggested, and there may be definitive reasons why it should go that route. The other is this a classic example of, to me, if we were to rezone this, it would have to be rezoned with limitations as to future development. I think the risk of future development 5-10 years down, even if the neighborhood particularly stays the same zoning as it is now, is a considerable risk. And that's why, I'll make my speech again, why the city is incorrect in not permitting contract zoning, where we could permit a zoning with restrictions on future development, which would bind the property. So, but we can't do that because the city won't allow it. So I think, in my judgment, we're back looking at the variance question. And I guess it would be helpful for me and for the record to understand the process, Nick, that they would go through to seek a variance before the BZA.
So they'd have to come here again. I think, Jenna.
Here being where?
The planning board. So probably for a design review, you'd say, Jana? Something simple, something simple.
I think that probably this would work for the BZA's purposes, because generally what happens with the BZA, they want to hear the planning board weigh in before they discuss the variance. So I think if there were clear direction from the planning board that you think the variance is the better way to go and put this on hold until they do that and send that message to the BZA, that might help.
I wouldn't even go that far at this point until we hear from the neighbors.
Well, until we see a site plan, quite frankly.
Yeah.
A clear, true site plan.
If you want to see a site plan, then they would have to come back.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions for the applicant at this point before we move forward with the discussion? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Verma. Please stick around. We may have some more for you as we come along, but I appreciate your time so far. Thank you, sir.
Certainly, no problem.
I want to bring it to the board a bit before we go to the public, to have a quick discussion before the public. You know, a couple of you have hit on different tax that this project may move forward with. I guess I'm trying to get a sense before we even go to the public to open up that box, so to speak. Does the board member, any board member, have any thoughts or feelings related to this request at this point? Is there a discussion that we can hold before we even go to the public? Mr. Scher.
I think that while I'm highly supportive of the notion of expanding solar and on this site, I don't think that it's appropriate to rezone the property. There are several reasons. Nick mentioned a couple of them. Mr. Williams mentioned one really important one, which is once we rezone it, it's open for a whole bunch of uses, including a number of commercial uses. It's also an island. You know, it would be an island, and we've seen what's happened. You know, the property to the north is R3. If this is TZ2, what happens with that one? What happens with the corner there? And this is really a dimensional variance. It's either a setback issue or it's the size of the accessory structure, which falls into the wheelhouse of the BZA. So for me, using rezoning to solve this problem is using a tool that's got much more power and many more potential for unintended consequences than the problem calls for.
Jeffries.
Yeah, I agree with the stuff that's been said. My thought when I first saw this was that we were using far more of a tool than we needed to. It's like killing a fly with a sledgehammer. I do think, regardless of what comes out in the plan, this is a seam by definition. And I think what we've got right now with the law firm, and I commend them for all the work they've done on it and their commitment to solar and all, the great example for a lot of us. I think I would be so much more comfortable having a variance to allow them to continue to, you know, put a few more cars and you know, with their energy independence, which I think would make a fantastic buffer to the neighborhood, and one that's a known one that the neighbors have been living with for quite a while. So,
Are there any other comments? Mr. Boyle, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I just concur with almost everything that's been said. I looked at my pad that I was writing today at about 2 o'clock, and the first thing I wrote were, what are the other options, instead of bringing what I consider to be a sledgehammer, as somebody else said, to this particular task. I think the options that I wrote down were indeed, as we've already discussed. And I would strongly encourage the applicant to listen to the suggestions coming from staff and pick up from what we're seeing here and take that route. I think rezoning is not appropriate at this time and in this place.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in real quick. Ms. Whipple-Boyce, did you have any comment?
I just wanted to add, as I foresee this going to the BZA, that I agree with what everyone has said tonight. I mean, I think the variance is an appropriate path for the applicant. And I also think it's important, I think Mr. Kozak said it at the beginning, the 2016 or the 2040 plan has not been adopted and has quite a lot of work. And a lot of the report refers to that plan. And I think that isn't something we should be doing yet. And I can only imagine what the neighborhood surrounding this property must think after having read this report,
Right.
as we truly have not worked through that yet in the 2040 plan, that process that we're going through. And so I just want to reiterate what Bert said earlier, that I just don't think that was appropriate for this at this time.
Right. So I'm going to jump in really quickly before we go to the public, and then we can come back and hopefully get a motion to move forward. I think indulge me for a moment, because I think it's important for the record to clarify our findings of fact. I could not be more against this rezoning. I think than anything. Just for the record, you know, the rights of use of the property, as indicated by the applicant, the use of the property would not change with this rezoning. And in fact, rezoning would only open up to new uses that currently are not allowed. The current zoning is not inappropriate. Indeed, the only reason they want to rezone it is because they want to add accessory structures, which has really nothing to do with the land use and the zoning of the site itself. And the idea that it's not detrimental is certainly true from the standpoint of the current condition, but the moment that this particular applicant decides to sell the property, it could be highly detrimental to everybody on that block and in that area. Further, with regard to the finding of fact, the 5 things that we are required to do in making our decision, I respectfully disagree that the intent of the master plan and the 2016 plan is clearly not that this should be increased. The density, massing, or use of this site should be increased. The 2040 plan is a draft, and I will go a step further to say, I'm not so sure this is a scene by definition. And frankly, before anybody in the public gets too concerned, I will go on record as saying I'm not so sure scenes, at least as they're currently presented, are something that I would even support in draft 2 of the master plan. So pinning our hopes on that is what I would call a giant leap at best. The existing property uses around the project site are all residential with the exception of the commercial directly across the street. And I don't see how changing the zoning of this property to allow more commercial is consistent with either the master plan or needed, quite frankly. All the zoning in the area is R3 on this block. Number 4, the suitability of the property for the uses in the current zoning. It's currently allowed as a non-conforming legal use. So again, this rezoning request is not there in order to expand uses or to somehow allow something that otherwise would not be. It's there to allow a very laudable and wonderful philosophy of resilience and sustainability, which I applaud, quite frankly, but there's got to be another way. And then lastly, with regard to the development trends, number 5, there have been very little development trends as noted. However, they have been almost exclusively residential in nature. So to sit there and rezone this to a TZ right now, to me, absolutely makes 0 sense, less than 0 sense. And I certainly just, before I go to the public, want it very clear where I stand on that. With that, I will turn this to the public and ask if anybody from the public would like to comment on this project. I will start, the first hand up I saw was from a Linda Ulrey. If we could please unmute Ms. Ulrey. If you could please just state your name and your address for the record, please, and then provide your
my name is Linda Ulrey, and I'm representing the owner who resides at 663 Purdy. We are directly west of the property in question and border it. We are totally opposed to the rezoning. I agree in totality with the comments made by Mr. Klein. I appreciate the commitment to the building that's made by the current owner. However, it is a large property with extensive parking. If it was rezoned, I can see developers licking their chops at the opportunity of what could be accomplished here, which would be to the detriment of the surrounding neighborhood. Furthermore, if the owner of the property is encouraged to seek a variance, I would request that the planning board require, as a requirement for the variance, that a green belt between his property, particularly on the western border, be made a requirement of granting the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ulrey. We'll go to gentleman described as Eric. You are next. If you could please unmute Eric. Please give your name and address and provide your comment, please.
Good evening. This is Eric Wolf, 393 East Frank Street. I live adjacent to the property to the south. I actually had quite a bit to say if the board hadn't taken the route that you've taken so far. I have to say I agree with everything that pretty much all of you have said tonight, including the previous, the neighbor just a moment ago. The BZA is the proper approach. So I will not go further with my statement about the potential uses that are noxious to a neighbor under TZ2. If it should ever make its way back to this board, I will use that opportunity, but I won't go further tonight. I also just want to say, and I'm not trying to be too picky here, but I'm a little disappointed in the planning department memo, which instead of relying on the current master plan, which was describing this area as a sensitive residential area worthy of protection and a building that goes back 138 years, they still found a way to approve a rezoning request based upon the 2040 plan, which hasn't been approved yet. It's hard to understand how that could happen. In any event, thank you very much. If you should change your mind and agree to not go the BZA route, I would have more to say, but thank you very much.
Sure enough, Mr. Wolf. Thank you. Last hand I see, Mr. Bloom. If we could please unmute Mr. Bloom.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening. If you could please, just for the record, state your name and address for me, please.
David Bloom. I live on Stanley in Birmingham.
Thank you.
This is a neighborhood and this is an area that has been contentious for quite a long time. I have spoken before the planning board and the city commission on several occasions over several years because developers, property owners wanted to change zoning in this area. And we've pushed the envelope from 01 and 02 to transitional. And this is a clear case of encroachment in the neighborhoods. It's actually leapfrogging some of the properties that are zoned differently. We have a situation where the building owner, as conscientious and concerned as he is about historic preservation, is already enjoying an unimproved use of the property. And he's asking for additional expansion. And I believe he's also abusing the process of bypassing the BZA and going to the planning board for this. And I commend the members of the planning board for recognizing that and commenting on it. I also express a high degree of disappointment to the folks in the planning department that have either come up with the idea or approved it or bought into the idea that Birmingham is going to have a new plan, and that could be the master plan, that could be the 2040 plan, and that we have seams so that this is allowed. So before that plan has even been approved, and there's a significant amount of dissent that's been expressed publicly by me and by others to the whole notion of seams. And I don't know where we end up on that. There needs to be more discussion. But to use that as what might happen in the future as a basis for doing something now, I think is another perversion of the process that we're supposed to be following in Birmingham. If this property owner would like to rezone, I think they should be participating in the master planning process. They can certainly go get a variance for the BZA. It's nice that they want to use solar power charging, and maybe that's a permissible use. But to come to the planning board, I understand him as an owner and having selfish reasons for wanting to do that. But having the planning board endorse such an action and actually make a recommendation that this go to the city to approve the rezoning, it's a dereliction of duty. It's abrogating their responsibilities to the residents community. And I don't know where those kind of crazy comments are coming from. And it's extremely divisive and disturbing to residents in this community that care about the future of Birmingham. Thank you.
Thank you. I was muted for that. And let me just say, Mr. Bloom, I appreciate your comments on seams and the rezoning. I do not appreciate the comments related to staff. The planning board has not made a recommendation. Planning staff has reviewed this and made a recommendation as they are supposed to do. And indeed, I will say that, looking at the draft 2040 plan for clues, for cues as to what we may see coming is highly appropriate. It's part of what they're supposed to do. The fact that I particularly disagree with them on this point is beside the point. Secondly, I do not think in my mind that the applicant is abusing any process with this. They are trying to move forward to develop their property in a manner with solar power, and they've chosen a route that this board has found inappropriate. That's not to pin any ill intent on them, by me at least. Secondly, thirdly, by a comment from one of the public, details of green strips or buffers are not measures for the Board of Zoning Appeals. They are measures for this board during a site plan review, which is why I was remiss, lastly, in my comments to provide the Board of Zoning Appeals with any input. I certainly think as variance is the right direction to go, but I am in no way providing any comment as to whether or not it's an appropriate variance until I see a site plan. I think that's the way it should act. I don't think tonight's meeting in itself should be enough. We should see what they want to plan, what they want to propose, and provide comment and input based upon that. With that, I'd like to bring it back to the board for any final comments or any motions. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Klein, I concur in your comment about requesting a site plan. I think that's appropriate, and I think also it would give the neighbor to the west and Mr. Wolf to the south an opportunity to see specifically what they have in mind before it goes to the BZA, and they can make a determination of then whether they concur in the request or object to the request. But right now, I don't think there is a basis to do either.
Right.
And I certainly feel the same way. So I think it's got to be re-teed up. And I think to be fair to the neighbors, it's got to come back in a site plan format. I totally concur in your comments with respect to the planning department and the role of the planning board. Frankly, I'm a little offended at the officious nature that Mr. Bloom tends to bring to these meetings, even though I concur entirely with the principle that he espouses today. The tone is inappropriate.
Any other, Ms. Ecker?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out one thing, and that is that if the property, the property today is zoned R3, so it is not actually subject to site plan review by the planning board. That's not to say we couldn't do a courtesy review. We could, if you wanted to put that out there, but it isn't actually required to come back for a site plan review.
So that's a great point, Jana. Thank you for that.
So it could go directly to the
design review board
or design review board.
Yes.
Which?
The Board of Zoning Appeals.
Without any site plan input from us or the design review board?
Correct. Which seems unusual, but this is an unusual situation. But it's zoned R3. It's not required to go through site plan or design review.
Okay.
Well, that adds a
but it still, I would have to go in a meeting format. And the public would have an opportunity to comment at that time based on what they're proposing.
Based on an actual proposal.
Yes,
Okay.
they would.
So I think it achieves the objective to give the two neighbors that have spoken an opportunity to comment specifically on the plans that would be the BZA.
And it would also allow the applicant and their consultants to perhaps, if they so choose, and we would recommend to reach out to those owners to show them specifically what they're proposing in order to help allay any fears.
I agree.
Okay, any other comments at a board level? Does anybody have more to discuss? Is there a motion brewing?
Make a motion.
Mr. Kozin.
My motion is to recommend denial to the City Commission regarding the rezoning application for 566 Ann Street from R3 to TZ2 for the following reasons. The arguments made as part of the application were not valid, didn't meet the criteria to merit rezoning of the property. The rezoning of if rezoned, it could have adverse impact on neighboring properties and the neighborhood in general. It appears that there was sort of a primary reason as it relates to the expanding of a solar panel canopy in the parking that was sort of the premise for asking for the rezoning. So there appear to be other paths available to try to get entitled to do that. And I'd also reference all the comments that were made by the planning board as part of this conversation.
We have a motion by Mr. Kozik. Mr. Williams, do you have a second?
I'll second it. Can we also add that we think that the request is inconsistent with the existing 1980 master plan?
Mr. Kozik, are you amenable to that?
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Comments on the motion? Seeing none. Could you read that back? No, I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. Longest motion in the history of the planning board. Any other comments on the motion? No. We will go to the public one last time. Is there anyone from the public to comment on the motion itself? I do not see any hands being raised. Again, you can use the raise hand feature at the center console. Do not see any raised hands, and we'll bring it back. Nick, do you have a comment related to the motion?
Very brief. I don't want to start any more discussion, but thank you for all of your comments. And I understand where all of the comments were coming from for certain, but just to, I guess, explain a little bit, I feel like we're in a really weird time, a little gray area here, where, yeah, the ordinance does require us to go to the current master plan, which happens to be 1980 and 40 years ago. So I tried to make it very clear that in my report, maybe not clear enough, I'll admit, that the 2040 plan is in draft form and not adopted. It was just simply, as you said, just to kind of get a reference to what may come. So your comments are noted for future cases, understood, and they all make sense. So just wanted to say thanks for those.
Sure. All right, with that, if we could please call the roll.
Bert Kozak,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffers,
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Motion unanimous. Mr. Verma, I please don't take this as a negative implication to you or to your client or to the owner of the property. I am highly supportive of resilient and sustainable design practices, and I love the approach that you're trying to take. The owner's trying to take with the building. It just the approach with the actual entitlement was off this time, and I suggest you seek a way to try to achieve your goals in a way that is more in line with the city's long-term goals. Okay.
All right, so I certainly appreciate all the input and the feedback. So correct me if I'm wrong, what you're suggesting is to follow the BZA route and seek a setback variance that you think would be more appropriate, procedure and process and the right forum to keep moving this project forward.
I would agree, and I would suggest you meet with staff and to finalize that approach, but we believe the variance approach would be the right approach to go. And again, I would suggest to you strongly that you reach out to the neighboring property owners. We have a long history in this community of solving problems before they become problems by just keep talking to adjacent property owners. And I think that would be a very, very, very prudent thing for you to do in this case.
Certainly, appreciate the input.
Thank you very much. So let us move along. Our next item is, all right, we are moving into a special land use permit amendment as well as a final site plan and design review for 470 North Old Woodward, which is EM Bistro, which is formerly the Red Salon. Now, this is one of the Bistro applications that's been forwarded to us. For those following along, there are two approvals that they must obtain tonight, one for a special land use permit and one for final site plan and design review. We will talk about these things together. However, they are two separate decisions that this body will need to make. Jana, is this you?
Yes, it is. Okay, first of all, I wanted to mention that, we just talked about bistros at the City Commission on Monday. This is not part of that process. That was for 2021. This is a bistro that came in the secondary deadline of April for a 2020 bistro license. So it's the only one that's moved forward for the year 2020. just to point that out. And then I also wanted to clarify that it's actually not for the Red Salon space, although it's the space right below the Red Salon sign.
Oh, fair enough.
Actually, the Red Salon is on the second floor, and it was a different, I can't remember what it was called, Christina's or something on the first floor, which perhaps the applicant can say. But it is the space right below the Red Salon sign, but the
Please
Red
forgive
Salon's on the upper floor.
Please
Okay,
forgive.
so this building is 470 North Old Woodward, and it is located, it's the storefront space immediately south of Market North End. They are looking to put a new bistro in there called EM, which I understand they are using to mean employee meal. And they have had a lot of their employees come out and come forward with dishes that were their favorites, and they've highlighted them in the Market North restaurant, and now they would like to do a different separate concept at this new space, which would highlight some of those, and also bring sort of a Mexican type of flavor to some of the foods, because apparently those have been the employee favorites over time. So, but I'll let the applicant talk about their concept a little more. But essentially, they're not proposing any changes to the footprint of the building. The building itself will stay the same. Just so you know, and I did include in the agenda packet the previous review. They already went to the design review board for facade changes, not like maybe a couple of months ago, to deal with some venting issues that they had that required some facade changes. So the changes that are shown on some of the metal panels and the trellis and the canopy type system with the fabric running through it, that was already approved by the design review board, as was the rooftop mechanical stuff that is also proposed on the roof. So at this time, they're basically here for the approval of the special land use permit to have a bistro there and all the details regarding the bistro, and also for any signage, of which they're proposing none at this time, and for the outdoor dining. So even though the exterior facade of the building changes were already approved, the outdoor dining layout was not, because that goes with the bistro application. So as we all remember, a bistro is defined as a restaurant with a full service kitchen with interior seating of no more than 65 and exterior seating now of no more than 65 as well. So they are a new business applying for the bistro. The bistro requirements, I'll go through. One, they're not allowed to get a direct connect bar permit after they're open. They can't have more than 10 seats at a bar. They can only serve alcohol to seated patrons or those standing in a defined bar area. Only low-key entertainment is permitted. They must have tables located in the storefront space along the windows. They must have a minimum of 70% glazing along the street. They must enter into a contract with the city outlining the details of their establishment. And lastly, they must provide outdoor dining. So to go through each of those, the proposed bistro is a total of 44 seats that are proposed inside. And I'll just put up the floor plan on the screen. Give me 1 second. There you go. Okay. So the floor plan shown at the top is what's already there for market. And the floor plan in the lower portion is what's proposed for EM Bistro. You can see on the screen here that the bar area is proposed in the center sort of the space, and the neighborhood or the Market North kitchen is in the back end. EM is proposing a smaller kitchen. There's kitchen facilities in this area here and this area here. They're sharing the restroom facilities with Market North. They are proposing 44 seats inside, so you can see it's a relatively small restaurant. They are proposing 10 of those to be at the bar. And then outdoors, they're proposing 64 seats. And you can see here, there's 2 dining areas, one immediately adjacent to the building on the sidewalk against the building. Then they are maintaining the required 5-foot pedestrian path. And then they're proposing pedestrian path or the sidewalk as we know it, and including portion of the on-street parking zone on the street to give them a total of 64 outdoor dining seats. They do have, you can see the bar seats, and then they've defined the bar area here to be approximately 89 square feet of designated bar area. They're not proposing any dancing or entertainment. They are proposing tables and chairs in the storefront window along the street. That's this area here. This is the wall, and then this is the outdoor dining. And in that area, they've got 21 seats. They are meeting the glazing requirement of 70%. They're actually at about 76.7%. They're using the existing glazing that's already there. They're not proposing any changes there. The applicant will be required to enter into a contract, and that was one of the things you'll note in one of the conditions, and they have submitted a partially executed contract on their end for the proposed bistro operation, which would be fully executed if the City Commission decided to approve this. With regards to the outdoor dining, as I mentioned, they are proposing the outdoor dining, the two areas that are in the same vicinity of each other, with 28 seats immediately adjacent to the building and 36 in the area on the other side of the sidewalk. They are proposing enclosures, painted steel cafe rails to go around the outside of the dining areas. You can see that shown right here and here along the street. And then they're also proposing 12 planters, which are these dark circles. Those planters are concrete, and they're proposing to plant skyrocket junipers inside those planters to kind of provide buffers on either end. I had indicated in the memo that they had not yet provided the proposed hours of operation. They have since provided those. I understand there to be 11 a.m. to 1 a.m., but you can ask the applicant those questions if you like. With regards to the mechanical screening, as I mentioned, they are proposing mechanical equipment on the roof. That has already been reviewed and approved with regards to the screening, et cetera. I did ask them, however, to submit that roof plan so that we can send it in along when it goes to the City Commission. So I do have that now, but it has already been approved. The screening that they're proposing would be painted to match the building, and it is proposed to fully screen all of the equipment that's up there. With regards to parking lot screening, they don't actually have to provide any parking for this site. It is located within the parking assessment district up at that end of town. There is a small parking lot for those of you that know the spot. Changes to that, and they're not proposing to use any of those spaces necessarily for designated parking. And they're not changing any of the screening situation. With regards to the dumpster screening, I raised in the memo that they needed to clarify how they intended to manage trash, whether they intended to use the existing dumpster in the back, and they will submit a complete site plan that shows that they are, or they did expand as part of their design review board application. They put another dumpster in the trash enclosure area so that there's a little more capacity in there, and they do intend to share that dumpster space with Market North in the back.
Jana, excuse me, you said they have a site plan. Was that approved by the design review board?
I was told by the applicant just this afternoon that it was. I will be double checking into that, but I was just told that later this afternoon.
Okay.
With regards to landscaping, basically there's one existing street tree you can see on the plans along North Old Woodward. They're proposing to keep that tree, and they're only required to have one. And they are adding the junipers in those pots along the edges of the cafe, as I already mentioned. With regards to loading, given the size of the restaurant, they're not required to provide any loading spaces. It's only a 965 square foot restaurant, and it does not require loading. As I mentioned, there's also not a parking requirement, but with regards to vehicular access, you know, if somebody's driving up to this, they're likely going to park on the street or maybe in one of the parking decks or the parking lot in the general vicinity. They could park in that small lot behind Market, and there are city sidewalks running along both the side street and North Old Woodward to get them from wherever they may park to the restaurant. They are proposing one front door, which is in the main center area here of the restaurant. And then there's also a main entrance to the building as a whole where there's a corridor running through there. and there'll be an entrance from the corridor as well into the restaurant too. And as I said, full sidewalk access all around for folks to get in there. With regards,
Jana,
yes,
while you're going through the layout, could you describe the kitchen area?
yes.
Show
It's a smaller kitchen, and they're calling it a cook line. So they've got all of their cooking and refrigeration along here, and then they have a prep area in the back corner here.
And what's taking place at the I guess it would be the southeast end of the building?
This end?
Yeah.
Market Square, Market's Kitchen.
Yeah, that's Market's Kitchen, as I mentioned earlier. They have, this is the kitchen for Market. You walk through here.
Okay. But they're not going to use that kitchen.
You can ask them that, but I don't believe so. I think they're going to do most of their prep work here. They're going to have a lighter menu, but whether they're going to use some of the refrigerated storage or something along those lines, that I'm not sure of. So with regards to streetscape, as I mentioned, there's the one street tree. They already meet the streetscape requirements in this area. It's a broom finished concrete sidewalk for the walking path. There's exposed aggregate concrete between the sidewalk and the curb. With the proposed outdoor dining, they would actually be proposing to use, and there you can see it looks like it's 2 parking spaces, but it's actually only 1 because the last one is not actually a parking space. So they're just going to be using a portion of 1 of those angled spots, and then there's a sort of an open area on the street to the south end there, and that will be where the outdoor dining will extend. They are angling the outdoor dining area because there is a driveway for the building to the south, right next to the south end of this building. With regards to lighting, hold on, I'll just pull up. Bear with me because the computer's a little slow. Okay. Here you can see the design changes that were already approved for the building. The application actually stated that they had 18 recessed lights that were proposed, and that was from the old canopy. There was an original diagram they were using for that. That's actually an error on the application form itself. My Adobe just crashed, so sorry about that. I'm going to turn that off. All right. If you need me to pull it back up, I will. It's a large file. So the lighting there, they are proposing to keep 4 of the existing recessed lights that are already there, and 8 of them are actually going to be removed. So there'll be 4 left of the existing lights. No new lighting is proposed. With regards to comments received from the different departments, we received no concerns from engineering, public services, police, or building. I did not hear anything from the fire department, so I will have to follow up with them. I didn't hear that they had any concerns, but I didn't hear they were all clear either. So with regards to a design review, as I stated, it's an existing 2-story building. There's no changes other than the use itself and the outdoor dining that would spread out outside the building. With regards to the outdoor dining area, there are standards that are in place with regards to outdoor dining, and I'll go through some of those. The first thing is they have to have a trash receptacle, and the trash receptacle, I'm going to try to pull this up again. They do have service boxes noted as service areas on the plan. I did ask them to clarify whether in fact that included trash receptacles. The applicant has advised that yes, it does. And some of the other requirements for outdoor dining, if they're adjacent to multifamily zoned property, they have to close at midnight. At 10. They are not adjacent to multifamily zoned property at this location, so they don't have that limitation, although they have indicated today that they do propose to close their outdoor dining at midnight. Bear with me, I'm trying to get those plans back. All right, let's hope it doesn't crash again. Let's see. No, unfortunately it just crashed again. I don't know what's going on. Okay. So then we look at the layout of the outdoor dining areas, and they are required to be spaced out the tables enough so that there's clear path for servers and folks to get to those, which there are. They are proposing stained oak rectangular tables and bentwood chairs in dark brown. Many of the chairs proposed, 25 of them, I believe, are round table chairs, and they did provide their materials sample sheet with a board that shows what those chairs are. They did not provide specification sheets on the furnishings, so I did ask the applicant to provide those tonight, so they will be prepared to share their screen to bring those up tonight. There's also some bench seating proposed for the outdoor dining area extending into the street. We have not received a specification on the bench seats at this time. Thank you, Nick. I have no idea what's going on here. You can also see in this drawing here that those what look like diamonds or squares there along the outdoor dining area into the street. Those are umbrellas. They're proposing 9 table umbrellas, dark bronze posts, and 6-foot square sunbrella in wheat fabric color, which is the same fabric color that they have already had approved for their awning area over the front of the building. That has a trellis system with a fabric woven through it to create a canopy type of effect there. Those 2 materials would in fact match. We are required to determine if the umbrellas, if they're proposed, would impede a view into a retail establishment. They would not. Not only here, they're in the street, but it's the restaurant that's EM here, so it does not impede any views into a retail establishment. They are proposing for the outdoor dining area, that is to be a Trex deck that's proposed for the area that goes into the street to bring it up to the same height as the sidewalk level dining. And I have stated in the report that they would be required to provide information, especially when it comes to building permit time, to show that they have the required sleeper channels along the curb so that the drainage continues to run as it's required to do along the curb and into the storm system. Then we get to a review of the bistro itself and the concept that they're proposing and whether or not this is something that the board feels would be a good addition to the city. As I mentioned, this is a 2020 bistro application. It was the only one received in 2020. We do have a bunch of different requirements that we look at with regards to bistros. One of the first things we look at is whether they've provided financial information that indicates that they have the ability to carry through this plan should they be approved to build it out and to operate it successfully as a restaurant. The information the applicant has submitted in that regard shows that they have extensive experience operating other restaurants, including those in town. It's the same operators as Market North immediately to the north. And they've also indicated that they will be using personal funds to finance this and that they do have personal funds sufficient to do so. They've obviously successfully operated Market North End, and then we are required to look into whether they have worked with the city in the past, if there have been any issues with previous establishments or other properties, whether they have worked with the city to resolve those, and they have. Also, we look at whether there's an adequate site plan that demonstrates that this will work as a bistro and will work for the service of alcoholic liquors as well. It's a very small space. As I mentioned earlier, it's only 965 square feet, so it'll be more of an intimate space inside, but there is sufficient space for maneuvering and wandering through in the bar area and the tables, etc. And it's all glass along the front and opens up into the street, which also has enough outdoor dining space for people to maneuver through. So I do think it has an adequate site plan to handle the capacity, which is only 44 seats. Also, they do have adequate health and sanitary facilities. And just so you can see, now that you see the elevation up on the screen, that brown colored column that's extending to the north, that was actually put in the mechanical equipment that had to be put in for Market North and also for EM Bistro in the back to accommodate the new use. And so it does, and it's been integrated into the design of the building so that it's not an eyesore, it's more of a design element now. but it does have all of the adequate health and sanitary facilities, mechanical equipment, et cetera, to function successfully. The bistro proposed for EM is in the downtown overlay district. That is one of the areas in town that the city has indicated there's an interest in encouraging more bistros. The downtown overlay, the triangle, and the rail district. This is in the downtown Birmingham overlay district, as I mentioned. And then lastly, we look at the type of cuisine that's being offered. Is it a concept or type of cuisine that's already offered in the city in other spots, or is it something new, unique, a different concept that we don't have? And it is Mexican inspired cuisine. And I will leave that to the applicant to expand on the types of food and all of that, the ambiance and the atmosphere they're proposing to create there. But Mexican inspired cuisine is not represented in the city right now in a particular restaurant. Obviously, we had Rojo before it closed, but I understand this will be a little more creative and eclectic type of Mexican cuisine than Rojo itself was at the time. So overall, based on what they're proposing, they do meet all of the requirements for a bistro in terms of the definition of bistro in our zoning ordinance and being in the right area and being a unique type of cuisine that's offered. And we would suggest that you might want to consider recommending approval of the final site plan and the special land use permit to the City Commission. To those watching, of course, the City Commission has the final say as to whether this application would be approved. And there were several conditions listed in the report, several of which have already been provided. The first one, that they must enter into a signed contract with the city. They have provided that. That still remains because that's required no matter what for a bistro. That they provide the proposed hours of operation, which they have. They submit a roof plan and specification sheets on the proposed rooftop mechanical equipment and screening, which they have. That they clarify how they intend to manage trash and if they intend to share the existing dumpster behind Market North End, and verify that there are receptacles in the outdoor dining areas. They have verified that the service areas outside do have trash enclosure or trash receptacles provided in there, and that they intend to share with the dumpster in the. We'll double check that was in fact part of the approval that went to the design review board, as they indicated this afternoon. Lastly, that they provide any details of proposed exterior lighting, but they have not, because they are not adding any. They're actually taking away 8 lights that are there. They provide specification sheets for the proposed outdoor furniture, which they do have and are prepared to show them to you. And lastly, that they comply with the requests of all departments. At this time, there haven't been requests from any departments, but the fire department is still outstanding. So I would recommend leaving that condition in.
Thank you, Jana. Before I go to the board with questions, I guess I have one. I'm somewhat almost afraid to ask it, but I'm a little confused tonight in the sense that we have, the City Commission has forwarded a bistro application to us for us to review a final site plan and a special land use permit request. And yet the final site plan that we have, we're being told like, this is already approved by somebody else. This is already approved by somebody else. How can you explain that to me? I've been on this board for more than 10 years and I've never seen an instance where a site plan I'm supposed to review has already been reviewed and approved by a different body. It seems confusing to me. It might be to other board members and to the public in general. And I guess I'd just like to understand, how did we get here quickly?
Well, it was a design review plan that was approved by the design review board, which they have the authority to review design changes to existing buildings that don't add square footage. So it wasn't so much a site plan. The wrinkle about the dumpster, as I mentioned, I just found out about today. So I'm going to look into that because I don't believe that the DRB generally reviews those types of things, but they may have inadvertently done so. That's why I want to look into that. But with regards to the exterior changes, that's a design plan that was approved by the design review board before they decided what concept they were going to go to put in a restaurant here.
So you're saying that that because the building owner or applicant or what have you wasn't sure, or at least didn't submit anything related to a restaurant, it could have been general retail, therefore they have received
Correct.
approval of a design plan. And the wrinkle here is that once they decided to go with a bistro, that kicks in this additional set of reviews. Is that a fair?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Before, they were coming with design changes because they knew they had to run that ductwork through and change the facade. So they decided to spruce up the whole front facade, and it could have been a retail.
Okay.
I mean, at the time they didn't know, and they submitted this application after the fact.
Yeah. I'm not implying anything inappropriate. I just,
It's unusual.
very odd to me, and I just want it clear for the rest of the board. We'll go Mr. Williams first, and then Nick, I know you got your hand up, and we'll go to Mr. Moore. Mr. Williams, could we unmute him, please?
I had a question about the parking space. I went up onto Google Maps, and there is one parking space. Refresh my recollection. It's been a while since we took a parking space. What's the economic consequence, and is there any finding the planning board has to make? I assume the city has to be made whole for lost revenue.
Yes. Right now, during the COVID, situation, it's totally different. But in the future, at least next year or whatever, when they start this, they are required to pay as if they're using that parking space to park there all day, every day that we charge. So they will have to enter into a license agreement with the city and an outdoor dining permit as well. They will lease the land that's on the sidewalk. So any public property they lease from us, and they pay a rental fee for that, and they pay for the full value of that parking space.
Will that be part of the signed contract with the city?
Yes.
Okay. And secondly, the so-called structure or rails that they're putting down, are those going to be taken down at the conclusion of the outdoor dining season, or do they remain?
The ones that are attached to the Trex decking for the exterior portion, well, the portion that extends into the road, and I think the applicant and his architect are here. Mr. Dingus, if you could address that, are you planning to remove the rails around the outdoor dining that's adjacent to the building when the outdoor dining is removed?
Those would remain. Can I?
Okay, so basically, we're removing one parking space in perpetuity for as long as the restaurant is operating.
Well, the parking space, the rails around the area for outdoor dining that extends into the street are attached to the Trex deck. So those rails would go away.
Correct.
Okay.
Along with the whole deck.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Fair enough. Mr. Boyle, you had your hand up with a question for Jana.
Yeah, Jana, I don't know whether this is pertinent, but I think we need to do it. Could you go through again the number of patrons that will be gathering in this area after COVID goes away? The number indoors at Market North.
I'm sorry, Robin, you cut out there. I heard the number.
The number of patrons in Market North in the following areas. Indoor, the number indoor seats.
At Market North?
Market North.
I believe they're at the full 65, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. The number at the bar.
10.
The number of outdoor seating maximum.
I can't remember off the top of my head what pre-COVID they had, but I may be able to pull up a document to answer that if you give me.
Okay. And then the same for EM. Indoor.
44.
At the bar.
10.
Outdoor.
64.
No.
Okay. Run the numbers.
Robin, it's 44 outside at Market.
Thank you. Okay, 65, 10, and 44 at Market, 44, 10, and 64 potentially outdoor at EM.
But remember, the 10 at the bar are included in the interior number.
Okay, take them off.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's 111 and 108. How many restrooms are there?
2.
I've been at these restaurants many times. I just don't believe that that is sufficient. But will that be covered by the another department who will check on that? Because this is serious.
Yes, that would be covered during the building plan review phase. They would have to meet all the building code requirements.
But we didn't get any comments from any other departments.
Yes, we did. The building department looked them over today, and they don't have any problems with it. In terms of their cursory review at this time, obviously they're going to get a full set of construction drawings during the permit review process, and they reserve comments for that time when they get those full plans as well.
I just want it noted that 219 people will be served by 2 stalls.
No.
4 stalls.
And Robin, I'm not sure the building code addresses outdoor dining. I may be wrong, but I don't.
That's even more. That's my point. That is exactly my point. That are we taking into account outdoor patrons in the requirements in the Michigan Building Code for restaurants?
No, they do not impact. That's been something that's been discussed both internally and externally over the years. It does not increase their back.
Well, thankfully, for the River Rouge runs by. I'm just making the point. I mean, I'm really behind this, but I think we just need to be very careful that we don't pack too many people into a really small building when we may not have the services to satisfy them. I'll stop at that.
I can assure you, we checked and confirmed with the code, and there are actually 4 stalls, not 2 stalls.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Sheriff.
Jana, I couldn't tell from the stuff that I saw, how tall is the railing on the tracks set up in the street?
How tall is it? It was hard to tell. There is a requirement that it has to be a minimum of 36 inches in height. Well, the building code requirement itself is if you're stepping up onto the platform more than 18 inches, then it has to be 42 inches in height, but it's not going to be that tall. So the requirement now is 36 inches. I do think that there may be some issues when they go through to get this reviewed for the outdoor dining platform itself, because generally in the past, the building department has required a commercial grade railing to go around those. And not only are there height requirements for that, but there's also spacing requirements for, can somebody fall out? Can they not? That's not technically a code requirement, but I will state that our building official is out of the office right now. And so he was not the one that reviewed this as he normally would. So I do think that there will be some design changes necessary for the railing, if based on past experience, what the building department has required.
So it's the building department's province rather than ours to be concerned with the height of the railing and I'll call it the solidity of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Jana, it's our province though, as far as what it looks like, right?
Absolutely, aesthetically, yep.
So if the current proposal is, let's just say it's recommended for approval tonight, and the building department says no, they're going to have to come back and get an amendment from us, perhaps administratively, but they're going to have to get that revised, correct?
Correct. And at the very least, I think you would want to comment on the materials, the colors,
Right. Exactly. Okay. I see no other hands up at this moment. I see what, Mr. Williams?
Could you put the design back on the board, or the layout back on the board? My question is, how close is the rail to the parking space that they're going to leave?
Thank you, Nick, for putting that up. I was going to try again, but
you make it bigger?
There you go. So there is no rail immediately along the parking space next door. That's where the pots are with the junipers in them.
Thank you, Nick.
The rail itself runs north-south. You see the line there? And
Yeah,
the rail comes up to the edge of the other parking space, and then there's pots that soften the edge along there. Yes,
well, it won't soften the edge of my car when I rip it.
that may be true.
I mean, I think, and look, I just think it's right to the parking space itself adjacent. I mean, I just think it's dangerous. It's too close. If we're going to effectively allow that space to be used, and I'm going to tell you, based on however many people we got, 200 people, that's going to be the most valuable parking space in Birmingham. And the rail's too close. The rail's too close to the space. It's got to be set back, and I don't see why it couldn't be. Frankly, put another juniper or whatever there.
It could be.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I see that we've already heard a bit from our applicants and their architect. They're here on screen, so let me invite them officially. I should have done that earlier. If you could please, for the record, introduce yourself, and maybe you could talk a little bit about some of what you've heard, fill in any blanks related to anything we've heard today, and at the same time, perhaps even get into the furniture specifications, the bench, etc., to help us move this along, if you could, please.
Daryl, do you want to begin with some of the architectural details, and then I'll talk about some of the conceptual thoughts about the restaurant itself?
Sure. Let's see if I can share a screen.
Daryl, for the record, if you could just introduce yourself again, just to make
sure. Daryl Dingus with Ron and Roman Architects in Birmingham.
Daryl, I don't think you can share a screen. Am I right, Jana?
I just added them.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, so here's the bistro chair. It's also on the material and finish board. And I believe I have it's not much of a cut sheet, but it does show the table base. Simply a black base, also by Eagle, the manufacturer of the chairs. And then we have a sample of the wood tabletop on the material and finish board that's been submitted as well. And then the bench will also be a similar stained walnut.
I am not seeing that. Is anybody else?
No, it's not showing up, Daryl. What's showing up is your application checklist.
Is it showing now?
There you go.
Yeah.
Just a simple black base. But you saw the chairs, correct? That showed up?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. And then, like I said, the benches are going to be custom built, and they're just a simple wood bench with the stained wood. You see a little bit of them in the rendering that Nick had shared.
Is that the same stained wood as you show on your material board for the tables?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Nick, are you still with us too? Can you hear?
Yeah.
If you can pull up that floor plan a little bit, that helps give everybody a visual, and maybe I can jump in here a little bit.
Yeah, if you could maybe walk us through your menu, your operations. Tell us what should we expect here?
Well, and thank you, everybody. My name's Joe Bongiovanni. This is our version of what's called EM, and it's employee meal. That's the acronym for it. It's we made this presentation to the City Commission, I guess, some time ago, back in April, and with COVID and everything, we've just kind of gone through the process slowly. You know, we've taken a step at a time, and we're pleased to be in front of you with this. We are prepared to move forward with our designs and our hopes for a more normalized dining environment next spring and into next summer. And that's when we anticipate this restaurant being ready to be open. Our hope is to provide a complimentary option to the North End dining experience as we have all along. EM is a derivative of many people that work for Market North End that have shared with us cuisine and cooking that is really most dear to them. And, you know, I've developed, in 7 years, we've developed a great kitchen staff at Market. And a feature of our daily experience is called the employee meal. And we do it twice a day. Kitchen staff prepares it for the rest of the restaurant. We all eat as a group, and then we have our day. And it's meant for many reasons. You know, we're in the restaurant business, and the thing that happens least for many employees in the restaurant business is that you eat. You know, we tend to serve and work and things like that. So the employee meal is their little oasis on a daily basis. And over the time, our staff has used the employee meal to feature things that they feel most strongly about. And we have a fair amount of Hispanic and Latino staff members, and over time, our staff has made us some of the best food that we've ever eaten in any environment that we've all been. And so what employee meal is a kind of an homage to all of those meals that we've had for 7 years and putting it into a package for our guests to have. And we really are, we're really lucky to have many kitchen staffers that have been with us in excess of 6 years. And we're proud of that. And we're trying to provide opportunity for those staff to continue to grow, to continue to earn good wages and develop things that I think benefit our community. Employee meal is coastal Mexican, a few twists. We feel that, you know, we have a small space to work with, so we're going to do a lot of oysters and ceviche and a dish called aguachiles, which is featured from parts of Puerto Vallarta and coastal parts of Mexico that are really authentic and really flavorful and vibrant, as well as some other items that we think are kind of unique and actually play into our Market North End concept a little bit. And so we intend to do a meat al pastor, which is on an open spit that works vertically and provide a variety of items that way as well. And then some other features. We have some enchiladas and pozzoles and things like that I don't think our town has really seen before. And I do believe our guests have experienced before. I think Birmingham is unique in the area that so many of our guests are well-traveled and they've seen really great things in so many places. And I don't really want to give them a run-of-the-mill Mexican restaurant. We would not do it. We are interested in giving them something that they may have seen somewhere on some vacation, and it may have reminded them something that's really terrific, but it's going to be our spin. And you know, I take a lot of pride in trying to provide an authentic experience without necessarily being a Mexican guy, right? You know, I'm an Italian, so, but I have a lot of belief in food and the way it's delivered to guests. EM is the epitome of a Birmingham bistro. It's going to be small. I appreciate Robin's comments, and I've known him for many years, and our opportunities to do business in our town. And the reality is, this is a little 40-seat restaurant. It will blow up in the summertime a little bit with that patio, and we do have some thoughts with respect to the property and how bathrooms can be managed and things like that. And we can talk about it further. There's upstairs bathrooms that could be integrated into our process. We have some options available to us to make sure that this is a appropriate experience. And honestly, as an operator in our town, since last March, everything is in flux, and so we realize that we are putting forth our expectation for something that you might experience next June or July when we've all been vaccinated and we all feel really great about going out to dinner. But the reality is we might be doing carryout for 6 months or another year or so as well. And we know that our food quality and the way we deliver it to guests will be the most important thing that we do in this town. It's the part that's made market work. And we would never abandon that experience. In just looking at this place, it's, we're going to cook right in front of people. The bar and the kitchen area are really integrated together. It's meant to be a lot of little stuff served quickly to people. But I think in the end, it'll be a really vibrant, small Mexican restaurant that people say, wow, that's like a little favorite spot of mine, I hope. At least that's what we hope for.
Questions, Mr. Williams?
So I assume, therefore, you're not going to use the kitchen facilities of Market North in this proposed facility.
That's correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, first, I'd like to thank you for continuing to invest in our city. I'm just amazed. It takes a lot of courage to invest in an environment like this. Couple questions. One is, and maybe this is for the architect. I'm just curious, on the drawings on the south end of the main dining room there's some stools that are facing. Yeah, the individual stools are. What is on the other side of those tables? What is that thick area there that's not the wall? Yeah.
It would be a continuous settee.
A bench.
Okay. Oh, so that's included
bench.
in the seating. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That offers flexibility for that seating.
Yeah, makes more sense than everybody facing a wall. One of the things I love about Market is it's got to be the easiest place in the world to do takeout now. How do you think you might do it at EM?
Well, that whole area that you see, Nick, you can help me with your little cursor. You're doing so good with that. Yes, those little swinging doors area there, right in that area, that we view that as kind of being the main entrance to the restaurant.
All right.
And so we're going to try to drive traffic that way to enter the restaurant and then distribute people back towards wherever they're going. I hope that my carryout business will really kind of happen right from that position there, and that we'll be able to kind of handle guests in that way.
Gotcha. Okay. And then my last question was the bench. So that on the outdoor dining that's on the Trex deck, are those? I saw one of the pictures showed some. It almost looked like picnic benches, and if they're fancier than that, my apologies. But are those on those three tables that are on the? Yeah, there's those benches. Are those look like they might be fixed to the table? Are the ones that are in the parking spot on the Trex deck, are those fixed benches too, where you couldn't slide back into somebody? Or are they separated where you can move the whole bench, I guess?
They'll be separated so that you can move the bench. But And to the question about the railing and being so close to the parking space, we could certainly adjust that so that there's more room so that cars aren't bumping into the railing as well.
All right. Looks great. I can't wait to get some real Mexican.
Any other questions of the applicant here from the board? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. Maybe hang out in case we need to come back to you. I will at this point go to the public. If anybody from the public has any comments, please use on the center console your raise hand feature. I will come along and I see, let's see, Susan Hall was first. If you could please unmute Ms. Hall. And Ms. Hall, if you could just restate your name and address for the record, I would appreciate it, please.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Susan Hall. I live at 243 Ravine.
Okay.
I'm right behind Market. My concerns really aren't necessarily with the restaurants because they're fabulous and we love everything that Bon Giovanni's do in Birmingham. My concern has to do with traffic and what happens in our neighborhood when people leave the restaurant. First one issue is, just give an example, Friday night, 9:30, I'm walking my dog. Somebody squeals around the corner of Ferndale and Ravine at about 45 miles an hour. I had to jump on the curb to get out of his way while he was going super, super fast. So it's not, for our neighbors, it's not really a safe environment with the bar so close. I love having, living where I live and having that ability to have nice restaurants. So I guess what I'm saying, when we add even more traffic, more popularity, more people hanging out to 1 o'clock at night, there's so many nights where there's a lot of noise. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. People are pulling over on Ferndale for maybe 15, 20 minutes, parking their cars and then going back in front of the restaurant. If you know what I'm saying, what's happening at 1 o'clock at night on Ferndale where people are just parking for 20 minutes. There's just a lot of stuff going on and so the people in the neighborhood are being affected. And I guess when you look at, we have signs coming in on Park Avenue, no parking for theater traffic. I mean, what is the plan that the city is looking at to sort of protect the residents in the little San Francisco area from an abundance of people cutting up Ravine, going down Ferndale, going down Park to get back to Woodward to leave the neighborhood? Are there plans right now? It's an abundance of traffic late at night, a lot of noise. That's my question.
There are no plans that I'm aware of at this time to change the traffic patterns through there or to redo any of the streets to implement any traffic calming measures, at least not that I'm aware of at this time.
So is it going to take like a tragedy where me and my dog are hit by a car on a Friday night and then everybody goes, oh, geez, that's too bad. She was just walking her dog. And by the way, there are no sidewalks on Ferndale on that spot. So I'm just saying it was a really kind of a come to Jesus meeting for me, like, oh my God, like somebody's drunk driving 45 miles an hour, flying up, literally squealing wheels, flying up Ferndale. And this happens over and over again. And I bet you talk to anybody who lives on Ferndale, on Euclid, on Ravine, they're gonna tell you the same stories. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, there's a lot of this traffic coming through our neighborhood.
If I could.
What I'm asking, policing is really what we need. We need Thursday, Friday night. If there was policing from like 9:30 till 1 o'clock in the morning, it'd be great.
And that's what I was going to say. If I could recommend, contact the police department, tell them your concerns. What they'll usually do, they'll start by sending somebody out there monitoring the situation. And that's the appropriate way to start as well if you want to request any multimodal improvements. And when I say multimodal, I mean, anything with regards to streets and sidewalks. You start with the police department. They will go and do kind of an investigation, see if there's what's going on, what can be done, and then it will go through the multimodal board. And the multimodal board could look at it. Do we consider narrowing the road? Do we need to add sidewalks on Ferndale because there aren't any? All of those different things. That's what the multimodal board would address. So I would encourage you to do that. We did recently just have some folks, neighbors down in an area just south of Brown Street, south of downtown, who came in and had a couple of issues at crosswalks, and we were able to do quite a bit to fix that situation. Yes. So we definitely would like to hear about it, and I would suggest starting with Commander Scott Gruey in the police department, that's the best place to start.
So is it, so does like, Mr. Bongiovanni feel any necessity to provide maybe some extra security on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays? Because he is the biggest bar in town.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hall. Well, let me bring it back, Mr. Bongiovanni. You know, you're a restaurant operator. You know this better than we do, that how you interact with your neighbors, how you interact with the public is almost, if not more important than your food and your service, right? So, you know, you own a number of restaurants. Is there anything that you would like to suggest you could do to assist the residents of the neighborhood behind you?
We're hugely sympathetic to the conversation. I was a resident of Ravine on 256 Ravine for 6 of the years of Market's beginning. We just moved over to the other side of Old Woodward now. So we're in the area. We pay attention to it. We obviously have the most control over our vendors and their suppliers, and we try to manage that actively. And the screeching Charger Hellcat that she may have heard that night, or whatever night she may have heard it, is certainly a huge concern of ours. And to kind of address the security issues of the building and such, for the past 2 to 3 years, particularly, Market North End has been actively securitizing its restaurant, dealing with unruly guests in a pretty firm manner. We have some pretty specific goals with respect to the neighborhood and trying to be careful with our environment. We truly believe that the most important guest is the one that lives the closest to us. And so that 0.3 of a mile or a half a mile within circle of where Market lies and ultimately EM is the most vital half a mile that we can think of. And we treat those guests really carefully, and we try to, at least. And so her comments, Ms. Hall's comments, are taken carefully. I can't tell you they're not going to hear screeching tires, because I'm astounded sometimes by, that's that little valley that we have here on Old Woodward, where it's funny how speed goes sometimes, and the way cars will go through there, or up Harmon Street, and these are little cut throughs that people know of from the town, and but we're certainly conscious of it and careful of it.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, my only comment is to agree with Janet. I think that conversation's got to be with the police department. I don't see any reason why the neighbors in that little San Francisco area couldn't basically petition for signs that the whole area not be subject to cut through traffic. There's no reason for it. And people should either take Old Woodward up to Oak and get to Big Woodward that way, or go south and go the other way. There's no reason for people to go through the neighborhood unless they want to save 30 seconds. So that's a conversation you're gonna have with the police department. I also say that if this matter goes forward, it'll be before the city commission, and that's a pretty good opportunity to
absolutely
make your comments for the city commission, because we don't have any control over that.
Fair enough. Let's go back to the public. We have a hand up, Mr. Bloom. Back again, if we could unmute Mr. Bloom. If you could please just reintroduce yourself quickly and provide your input.
Hi, thank you. This sounds like a really nice concept. We do already have at least 3 high traffic restaurants there. You've got Market itself. You have Lux, you have Salvatore Scalapini. And Monday night at the city commission meeting, there was a proposal that many people thought really cool for another bistro to go in there that would actually back up to the river close by, and there would be outdoor dining basically on next to the river. And this area already gets crowded Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. And I'm wondering where if this establishment goes in, and perhaps if another one goes in, where everyone is going to park. I think people would end up being forced to park in the Northfield Woodward and walk, and maybe that would be desirable, but an additional establishment like this coming in with maybe one on top of it could end up kind of hurting everybody when it comes to parking and ability to access the site. So I would just encourage, I thought Mr. Boyle had a really good comment about the bathrooms. I think we need to also take a look at making sure that we're not overloading the ability for patrons to go to that area. Thank you.
Much. Let's move on. Mr. Reagan, if you could please unmute Mr. Reagan, and please introduce yourself and provide your input, sir.
Hi, it's Paul Reagan. I live here in Birmingham on Purdy. You know, it's an interesting discussion. I was a little interested in Ms. Hall's observation. She lives there and has, I don't know how long the squealing tires have been going on. Maybe you can inquire. But the subsequent conversation after that, it's not our job. It's not our deal. Take it to the Traffic and Safety Board. Take it to the police. Listen, you're the first point of call here that creates the problem that moves downstream, and then the neighborhoods have to deal with it on an individual basis. Why is it her problem? It's your problem. Don't kick the can down the road. So that was Ms. Hall. Mr. Bloom is mentioning there's one parking space. Where are they going to park? No, Mr. Bloom, they're not going to park in the deck. They're going to park in the neighborhoods. That's where they're going to park. And then you've spent, I don't know, 20 minutes talking about the decor. They've got one bathroom. They've got one bathroom. And you spent 20 minutes talking about the decor. Something's wrong with the process. I don't know how this project even made it to this level. It came through a design review committee. How did this project make it through there with one bathroom? That's my comments.
Thank you very much. Looking again, Ms. Hall, you've got your hand up again. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else to add here. I don't mean to cut you off, but I also don't want to prolong it. Did you have anything else to add quickly, Ms. Hall?
I have one other issue, and it's not even related to traffic. It has to do with rats. My neighbor across the street at 181 Euclid has had a lot of rat problems. I rent 391 Ferndale. I literally bought on my Ravine Street today. I have had rat problems, and I know that it's kind of related to the restaurants. Is there other plans to sort of maintain, and how quickly do they empty the dumpsters? I know it's a lot of dumpster management. I think the rats actually picked up and moved into the neighborhoods more actually when COVID hit, and there was a lot less people coming to the restaurants, if that makes sense. The rats were looking for other places to get food. I know there's a lot of rat traps around a lot of the parking decks. I've noticed that. But when I had one in my backyard, I sort of freaked out because I've never experienced that before. Is there plans for rat management? I should say rodent, but I like rats.
Right. More impactful. Mr. Bongiovanni, how do you plan to handle your trash? I mean, how do you handle it now for market? How will you up the game, so to speak, with another restaurant coming in right next door?
Yeah, we've increased the area in which we could manage that space. We truly are on top of the rodent and rat problem that's existing in the city. We would say that it's not limited to just our area, and I think it's existent in many areas of the city, and we are super aggressive about the way we try to trap, or so to speak, take care of the process. As far as trash pickups, right now we have 5-day-a-week pickup. I mean, we're picking up trash every day. There's not a day that we don't get a pickup from the same car trucking that does the rest of the city. So we're really aggressive with the way that we try to treat that. We don't want the garbage around either. We don't have any room for it.
Looking to the public, I see no other comments, so I will bring it back to the board. Jana.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that I received an abundance of letters since the
please.
packet went out.
Excellent.
So I don't know if you want me to read them all or to indicate that I have received 16 letters in support of EM Bistro at 470 North Old Woodward and 2 letters against EM Bistro at 470 North Old Woodward. Do you want me to read them all? Do you want me to indicate who they're from? What would you like me to do?
I guess I'd like to know, particularly without getting into the details, could you tell us who the letters are from? Perhaps even just list them off, and then we can get a motion to include in the packet to ensure that the city commission sees them.
Okay. Brian Nager, Michael Brennan, Alyssa Ercolani, Christina Bajaj, Claudia Dekai, Brooke Shaw, Amy Gooch, Jeffrey Clark, Trang Greider, Jeff Delamere, I'm sorry, I probably said that wrong. Jeff Sakwa, Craig Karamanian, Kelly Richardson, Mike Richardson, John Locker, Kevin Denha, Jason Scott, Natalie Gada.
Okay.
And did I say John Miller already?
No.
John Miller.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
As to the, I mean, it would be nice to know if there are only 2 letters opposed, maybe she could read those.
Okay.
Sure. I'm
All
supporting
right.
that.
The first one is from Brian Nager, and it says, Dear Jana, I'm writing to express my concern regarding the proposed special land use permit and final site plan and design review for a new bistro at 470 North Old Woodward, Birmingham. The owners already have 3 bistros in the north end of Birmingham, and this seems to be creating a monopoly. In the not too distant past, concern has been raised by the Planning Commission about owners creating a monopoly situation, and the applicants were denied. It is my view that the Planning Board should not approve this application, nor should it have been forwarded to the Planning Commission for consideration. Furthermore, if the Planning Commission decides to approve, then additional bistros on the north end of town should not be prejudiced against as having too many bistros in this market. In fact, there should be a condition that other bistros be allowed to open. I respectfully request your and the Planning Board's response to be to decline the plans for this bistro. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Brian Nager. The second one that is not in support is from Kevin Denha. Dear Mrs. Ecker, I'm writing to express that I am strongly opposed to this new bistro. I'm the owner of 2 properties that are very close to the proposed new bistro, 574 North Old Woodward and 700 North Old Woodward. The ownership group for this application already owns 3 bistros in the area and seems to be creating a monopoly. Moreover, there are no parking passes at all for existing or potential tenants in my buildings, as well as other office commercial property owners. How can I lease out space with no parking passes to offer new potential tenants as well as existing tenants? Has the applicant researched or tried to possibly look at leasing parking spaces for their employees with office building owners in the area that have their own dedicated parking lots? There are many in the immediate area on Woodward Avenue. Furthermore, if this application is approved, then more bistros should be allowed in the north end of town as well. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Kevin Denha.
Thank you, Jana.
You're welcome.
Let's just quickly, for the record, the subject property and its parking requirements.
You're asking?
I'm just asking for the record. The site is located where?
It's located in the parking assessment district, which means that under the city ordinances, they are not required to provide parking for commercial or retail uses.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. To the board, any Stuart, Mr. Jeffries.
Hey, Janet, just I looked at the packet for the city commission and I recognized that Mr. Nager was a participant in 2 of the 5 applications. Was Mr. Denha and any of those either?
I do not believe Mr. Denha was, at least not explicitly called out as a member. Whether he was, I don't know. But Mr. Nager is a property owner of 2 of the proposed bistro locations, one of which got moved forward, and a business owner in the investment if they were to go ahead.
Right. And well, from what I understood, he had 2 in there.
He did.
We didn't want him to have 2 going forward. They said, did you pick the best one or whatever they like the best? One quick other comment, it kind of got touched on. I can assure you that rats and squealing Hellcat Chargers are not unique to Little San Francisco. I don't even live within 7 blocks of a restaurant, and those are both issues here. And in fact, since we have longer straightaways where I'm at, they can get up to a higher speed. So I totally sympathize. I think we need to be writing a lot more tickets, but that's, ever since Dream Cruise took on its whole new thing, man, I tell you, the speeding has just gotten nuts.
So any other comments from the board?
May I make a comment?
Just a moment, Mr. Bongiovanni. Any other comments from the board? Mr. Williams?
Well, I think the comments of Mr. Reagan and frankly, Mr. Jeffries are pretty consistent, as were the comments of the neighbor. And I do concur that Birmingham's a problem. I think this points out that if we don't deal with the parking situation in the master plan, we're making a mistake. And we're going to have to. So I'm sympathetic to it. I think it is important for these comments not only to be minuted, but for the neighbors at the time the project, if it goes forward for the city commission, one way or the other, to make the comments there. This is not just Mr. Bongiovanni's problem. It's a problem of the whole North End, and it's really a problem throughout all of Birmingham. And I can tell you that on the west side, even west of where Mr. Jeffries lives, there are speed problems and cut-throughs and people ignoring stop signs, and we don't have sidewalks either. So Birmingham has a big problem, and we recognize this as property owners. And so maybe some of us need to show up at the city commission and put some pressure on the police department. Frankly, the speeds on Southfield are so slow, it's hard to get through. But if you go 1 street west or 1 street east, you pick up speed. The police enforce Southfield and they don't enforce any of the side streets. Why? I don't know. I'm ranting, but it's right outside my house. So you're not the only ones in San Francisco, Little San Francisco, that have the problem. I do recognize it, and I think we need to continue to put pressure on the police department and probably city commission. And, but it's not just Mr. Bongiovanni's problem.
Mr. Bongiovanni, I'll give you a last word here if you'd like it.
I want to clarify, because you read the criticisms. My wife and I own Market North End. My father, who recently passed about 18 months ago, owned Salvatore Scalapini and Lux. We're not affiliated in that respect. We are family members. And I think that the one thing I'd ask the commission to recognize, or this group more than anything else, is that the family has worked really hard to have 3 very positive, distinguishable restaurants that meet the needs of the neighborhood. That we have never, ever marketed ourselves as one. We have never tried to operate as one. We really actually look for that differential more than anything else. And we think we've achieved it. And we're so really happy with our impact on the neighborhood. And I mean, you had some write-ins today, and they're in response to other write-ins. But the reality is, the guests that are coming. And Mr. Boyle, you're a guest of ours as well, and I totally recognize the capacity concerns that you may have. And I can assure you that we're going to meet those capacity concerns. That's not going to be an issue. And our goal is to make another operation that melds into that envelope that you guys have already created. Well, I guess that we've already created up there. And we're grateful for the opportunities that have been given to our family. And I'm the oldest son. I appreciate our opportunity at Market North End, and we think we've met the need. And that's the reason why we've had some success. And we think that EM will meet two needs. It'll meet a need to continue to maintain a staff that has kind of dedicated themselves to serving Birmingham guests. And it'll also meet a need of guests in the neighborhood. And so maybe it's a two-edged thought. And so I guess that's the last I'd say. I appreciate all the public comments as well.
Thank you. So let's bring it back to the board. So board, where are we headed tonight? Where is your thought process? Really, Mr. Boyle?
Yeah, well, let me say that I think that what we've just heard about the 3 restaurants that currently operate there, they have fulfilled the goal that we set out with the city and our board, 14 years ago. So therefore, I applaud the work that has been done there. I do think, however, that we do need to be very careful about trying to pack too much into that area. I think the question about parking does need some thought. For example, I think we should be using our technology a little bit better so that people can know that in the evenings the decks are virtually empty, and that they will provide safe, secure parking for any visitor that comes in to eat in Birmingham. Small things like that, I think, need to be thought about. But generally speaking, I think we've got a very, very good model here, and adding a very small, specialized addition to it is only going to help us, providing we can manage it. I think that the family and the folks you've been hearing about tonight do a good job. It's just making sure that we as a city support them and are here to assist the work that they are doing. So I'm in favor of this, and I'm happy to make a motion, or at least start the motion process. We need 2 motions, I think, Mr. Chairman.
That is correct. Are there any other board comments before someone jumps to a motion? Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was thinking about, there's a handful of restaurateurs you can think of that do a really good job. Like Joe Vicari, who's now taking over Triple Nickel, or different families that do a really good job, and or Norm LePage, who's got 3 places within a very short space over on Eaton Street. And we want these guys. I mean, they do a good job, and I don't want to penalize them. So I'm all in favor of seconding the motion that Robin's about to make.
Well, I don't see any other hands going up. So, Mr. Boyle, did you want to make the motion?
Well, I'm actually at the motion section in our packet, and I just want to make sure, maybe Jana, you can guide me through it in terms of which one that I'm looking at and which one should come first.
It's up to you which order you want to do them. Potentially the final site plan first. And the conditions that would apply to the final site plan, I would suggest, might be the issues of the roof plan, the trash, the lighting, and the spec sheets.
Okay, so I would make a motion to approve this final site plan to the City Commission to permit a bistro license for EM at 470 North Old Woodward, with the condition that the following items be provided prior to the hearing to the City Commission. Will I read them, Mr. Chairman, or just state numbers 1 through 7?
No, please read them.
Number one, a signed contract with the city that must be fully executed upon approval of the SLUP and Bistro license. 2, provide the proposed hours of operation for EM Bistro. Number 3, submit a roof plan and specification sheets on the proposed rooftop mechanical equipment and screening. 4, clarify how they intend to manage trash and if they intend to share the existing dumper behind Market North End and verify receptacles in the outdoor dining areas. 5, provide full lighting details for any proposed external lighting. Do we still need that one?
No, they have provided that information.
That's what I thought. Delete 5. 6, provide spec sheets for the proposed outdoor furniture. That was provided. Is that sufficient, what we saw tonight, Jana?
That's up to you. I would say we didn't get a spec sheet on the bench that I saw.
We should have that submitted just for the package to be complete.
Okay, so number 6 remains. Number 6 remains, and lastly, 7, the applicant comply with the requests of all city departments.
We have a motion by Mr. Boyle. Do we have a second?
Jana, did we get number 2 though? Didn't we get their hours?
We did, yes. We got number 2 and we got number 1. You can still leave the conditions in there if you like, because we've already got them as long as we have them before the city commission. Most of them we do.
Motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Mr. Jeffries. Any conversation on the motion? Ms. Whippleboyce, could we please unmute Ms. Boyce?
Thank you. Condition 6, the specifications sheet for the outdoor furniture, which specifically is this built-in bench. I believe the applicant stated that that's a custom-made bench, so I suppose they could provide a like a drawing of what they're going to have built, but otherwise I don't think we would be able to expect any sort of a spec sheet.
Right.
So just so that's clear, so we know what we're getting.
I think
I should say.
That's a great point. I think it's clear in the minutes that we just want to make sure this commission has a full package of what they're proposing to do. And if it's a sketch, drawing, photo, something that will allow intent would be fine. Mr. Williams, comment on the motion. Can we unmute Mr. Williams, please?
I don't think we muted him.
Well, he was, but there we go. Mr. Williams.
Okay. I just point out that the signed contract would also include perhaps the revised layout on the street to move the benches further away and the rail further away from the one parking place in Birmingham. I just simply say that ought to be, the plan ought to be clarified before it gets to the commission to take that into account, as they have indicated they could. I don't think we need to make it part of the motion.
Fair enough. Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Sheriff.
It's interesting listening with interest to the comments of some of the residents. I think it's important to keep in mind that the problems that we're talking about are problems that come with success. There are communities all over the area that would love to have our problems. And I think that we as a city and a community need to work on managing those. I also would encourage what I'll call the merchant community, including the restaurateurs, to cooperate with the city, its various departments, to see what can be done. I would have thought that we might have heard some more specific suggestions from the applicant here on what they might do about some of those issues than just saying we'll address them. But I'm supportive of it because I think we're still at the point where we want to keep that area of town vibrant. This is a good project. It doesn't add, it's a 40-some seat indoor and 60-some seat outdoor. It's not a several hundred seat restaurant that would add too much to the area.
Any other conversation about the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the public one last time. Any comments related to the motion itself?
Not specific to the comment, but to Mr. Reagan's concern about the toilets again. The restrooms have 4 water closets, which accommodate 300 people by code.
By code. Thank you
Yes.
for the clarification.
Thank you.
So let's bring it back. Can we please do a roll call?
You have to go to the public, Scott.
I already did.
Okay.
I already did. Brought it back.
On the motion?
I did.
Okay.
You did.
Robin
Please
Boyle.
call the roll.
Robin Boyle.
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Bert Kosek.
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Brian Williams.
Yes.
Janelle Wolfe-Boyce.
Yes.
Scott Klein.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you much. Now that is the final site plan. We now need to discuss the special land use permit. Is there anyone willing to make a motion related to the special land use permit? Mr. Jeffries, do you want to tackle this one?
Sure. Is it, am I reading this right, Janet? It's the same exact language. I just don't.
Correct.
Okay. The same.
All right. The planning board recommends approval of the special land use permit to the city commission to permit a bistro license for EM at 470 North Old Woodward, with the condition that the following items be provided prior to the hearing at the city commission. And I'll read them. A signed contract with the city that must be fully executed upon approval of the Slup and Bistro license. Provide the proposed hours of operation for EM Bistro. Number 3, submit a roof plan and specification sheets of the proposed rooftop mechanical equipment and screening. Number 4, clarify how they intend to manage trash and if they intend to share the existing dumpster behind Market North End, and verify receptacles in the outdoor dining areas. Number 5, provide full lighting details for any proposed exterior lighting. 6, provide specification sheets for the proposed outdoor furniture. And finally, number 7, the applicant comply with the requests of all city departments.
Motion by Mr. Jeffries. Do we have a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. Scher. Any conversation at the board level about the motion? Seeing none, back to the public one last time for any conversation, the public comment on the motion itself. Seeing none, we will bring it back. Could we please call the roll?
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Brian Williams.
Yes.
Janelle Wolfe-Boyce.
Yes.
Robin Boyle.
Yes.
Scott Klein.
Yes.
Bert Kosek.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Please welcome Mr. Bongiovanni. Congratulations as you move forward. But please do take to heart the comments from the residents, particularly those immediately near you. We know you'll take them to heart.
We certainly will, and we're really grateful for your support by everybody here today, and certainly Jana by your presentation. Thank you guys, everybody.
Great. Let's move along. Jenna, any other communications or administrative approval that we have to talk about tonight?
Yes, we do have one. You want me to get into it now?
We're to it.
Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen and hope that this doesn't crash again, but let's give it a try. There we go. Okay. For those, if you remember, this is East 14 Mile. If you remember, you can see on this screen here below this yellow box. So in this area here, that's the site plan. It's pretty small. They've requested administrative approval for a bunch of changes. It's more than we would administratively approve normally. We did tell them we would bring it to you informally. There are several changes that they're proposing. First and foremost, the footprint of the building is changing. It's proposed to get smaller, but if you recall, they previously had a tenant. They were proposing a second tenant space on the far east side of the building. Since they've indicated because of COVID that they've ended up changing their plans. They don't want to share the building, and they've expanded the private treatment areas and so on, put dividers within the floor plan layout, and they're getting rid of that second tenant space. So that has changed their building a little. They're actually proposing to shrink the building by 140 square feet, but the footprint is changing. It's shrinking east to west. It's moving. It was previously 5 feet off of Mansfield. It's now proposed to be 10 feet off of Mansfield. So it's shrinking widthwise, east to west, and it's increasing slightly north to south. So that's the biggest thing. Also, they are changing the layout of the parking lot just a little bit because they've actually flipped. If you remember, they have this green space. I don't know why this, I got a funky computer today. This space here was planted with landscaping. They've actually shifted it. It used to be that there were 5 parking spaces on this side and 6 on this side. They've just flipped it. The landscape area is still the same. They have made the sidewalk a foot wider, as you had asked them to the last time they were here. Let's see, what else? They've changed the location of the handicap space. Oh, so the other big issue is with regards to the elevations. Because they've changed the interior layout, it has changed the exterior elevation a little bit. Hopefully this doesn't crash, because every time I moved it before it crashed.
You know, it might be easier, Janet, if you could tell us what they didn't change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know, and that's why this is here.
Hey, you know, maybe, Jana, before you go any further, I mean, is there anybody on the board that would like to go further and feels that this might be administrative? Or are we pretty much to the point where we think they need to come back without going into much more detail? But what's the board's general
how much
sentiment?
more do you got, Jana?
Well, it's mainly the proposed here, that's moving. They added a window over here, but there used to be 2. On the east elevation, though, they've removed windows. Let's see.
I think they have to come back.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing they've done is completely change the site plan, shrink the building, and mess with the facade. So
They've
if that's
changed
all,
the footprint and they've changed the facade, yes. They indicate that they're minor changes. They're more changes than we would normally administratively approve, obviously.
is there anybody that wants to argue we should administratively approve them? Because I think we need to bring them back. Any contradiction to that? No? All right. I
Hearing
think we
none,
got to bring it back. Yeah.
Okay. That was the only one.
So let's talk briefly about the draft agenda for November 11th.
Can I ask a question? I thought there was something about antennas on the 555 building.
Yes, those were administratively approved. They have a whole complement of antennas and equipment on the top of that building.
So they were approved?
Yes.
When were those approved?
Are you saying that they were in the administrative approval section of the packet?
Yeah.
Then those were approved. When we deal with any type of cellular equipment, it goes through the building department, engineering department, and planning department. Let me pull up the file and see if I can get you the date.
Yeah, so why would it be in our package though?
Oh, just because you've probably seen them before, you just haven't noticed.
Right.
They're
And that's why I'm concerned. So from the drawings that were in the package, I couldn't really understand what and where. You know, I've looked at some, you know, Google Street Views and things like that, and you know, so if this ship has passed, it's passed, but this might be a conversation we should have, because these, I can't think of big offenders here, but in Royal Oak, up and down Woodward, this stuff just rose on buildings, and even on the 555 building, because it's so tall, you know, I don't think you really notice it, but I'm just concerned, you know, where does it stop? And I know where it's done appropriately, it's done inboard somewhat on a mechanical screen, so not on the front face of a building or near the front parapet wall, but it's so, you know, again, I don't know how it was determined that these are.
Yes, okay, it didn't crash, so let's hope. Just so you know, we do have rules in place already because we only allow an additional 10 feet of height to go for any type of mechanical equipment on the roof. So this is the building itself. You can see where South Old Woodward and where Bowers goes under. It is on the top of the 555, and there's a lot of electric or mechanical equipment up there already. If we see anything particularly offensive, i.e. too close to the edge, really large, really different than what was already up there, then we would look into it a little further. But generally speaking, there hasn't been anything crazy that they've proposed at this time.
So we can move on, but what I see now is visually offensive. So, and that's even before this stuff goes on. So it's just going to be more of sort of ugly stuff and you know, it's kind of like solar panels a little bit. I don't understand much about it. So for us to sort of get educated about what works and how it needs to work and how it, you know, it's not going away. We all have cell phones, and so I don't know how others feel, but
My biggest concern is we have all those antennas and I can barely get 2 bars at my house.
Well, the other issue is that because we have the 555 building and its height, it's helped us to avoid a lot of applications for other freestanding towers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a trade-off for sure.
So you are looking at this stuff carefully, and
yes,
again, I'm thinking like is it called the Basha building in Royal Oak? And
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
and it doesn't stop. So
right, and I don't know if they have any regulations. At least we have, you know, the 10-foot max height, period. And of course, it has to be screened, so it has to be within the screen wall. But the screen wall might be 3 feet, and then the antenna would be higher. So I completely understand what you're saying.
Okay. Let's talk about the draft agenda for November 11th. Jana, we had originally scheduled that as another master plan meeting, correct?
We had, and it's to review the remaining mixed-use districts.
Right.
How many additional meetings do we have scheduled for the?
We have only one meeting scheduled in November and one meeting scheduled in December because of the way the holidays fall.
My question was how many meetings do we have with respect to the completion of our responsibilities under phase 1 of the plan?
The master plan.
Well, joint meeting, which unfortunately did not occur. I'm going to guess, because this isn't set in stone, but you're probably looking at November, December, January, at least.
That's what we had scheduled, correct? We had 3 more scheduled to answer the question, right?
Maybe 4.
Right. And we have 1 meeting as a board in November, 1 in December. We have a lot of site plans, do we not, Jana?
We do currently have a backlog of site plans because both of those meetings are set aside for the master plan at this time, and therefore people that are waiting with site plans would not be heard until January.
Is there an opportunity with noticing that we could still get site plans on the 11th if we made a change to the rules tonight?
The 11th of November? No, we could not. Let me just make sure I'm right when I say that. That's right. That's only 2 weeks away. So that would not meet the 15-day notice requirement. And a couple of them I know are SLUPs, and they also would have had to been in the paper this past Sunday.
Okay.
So we couldn't on the November meeting, but we certainly could for the December meeting.
The alternative is to schedule either a second meeting in November or a second meeting in December.
Correct.
I really think it's a mistake to make people wait until January.
On site plans?
Yes. And so we should go forward with the master plan at the first meeting in November. But the December meeting, in my view, should be site plans. And if we should schedule a special meeting, then we should do so. And I would make it in late November, since certain candidates think we shouldn't have Thanksgiving anyway.
As always, Mr. Williams, thank you for your comments.
Close.
The 25th is certainly obviously out.
Scratching my head at that one, I must say.
Yeah, so I would agree, Mr. Williams, that I think given the fact that we had to postpone a meeting of the master plan in October, and that we're now diving into the heart of the holiday season, multiple holidays, I find the idea of adding another meeting perhaps a little difficult, perhaps. I'm wondering aloud whether the rest of the board feels that we should, at worst or at best, change the rules for December 11th to allow site plans and try and load those up. And then perhaps even consider, do we go forward on the November 11th and add a meeting on the 18th, or do we push the meeting from the 11th to the 18th? And does that give you enough time to put site plans on that meeting instead?
It does.
Postpone the next master plan meeting until January, when we're back a little bit fresher from the holiday season and more people perhaps able to attend. Mr. Jeffries?
Is there a conflict on the 18th with any other public body?
On the 18th, though, the Design Review Board, the HDC, and the Public Arts Board all meet that night. Obviously, none of those meetings are not televised, so we wouldn't have to share the City Commission room right now, seeing as they're all virtual meetings. And the Public Arts Board starts at 6, and the Design Review Board and HDC start at 7, so there'd be overlap there.
Yeah.
But not a conflict of physical space.
Yeah. My sense is that we need 2 meetings on site plan, however you want to do it.
Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's been following along on Nextdoor, but the good and the bad. The good is that we have a very, very high level of interest in this November 11th meeting. The bad is, I think some of the information out there isn't particularly correct. But I know there's a lot of anticipation for this meeting, because remember, the meeting that November 11th was supposed to be several weeks ago, and it got canceled when they did the changeover on the virtual meeting. So, I mean, my personal opinion is I would keep that, because we have the momentum. We have a lot of people who have read the plan and read particularly these parts. I like to keep that. I'm perfectly fine. I think somehow if we needed an extra meeting, we should be able to find 3 or 4 hours, and I could do the 11th and the 18th.
Yeah, I concur the 11th. I also have read Nextdoor, and I think the chairman's going to be busy clarifying what we're doing. But I think the meeting on the 11th should go forward with the master plan. My view is we should schedule a special meeting, and the December meeting should deal with site plans.
Jana?
Yes, if I may, the ones that are in the pipeline for site plans, I think if you convert the December meeting to site plans, that will be sufficient to address it. There's only 3 currently in the pipeline, but 2 of those are special land use permits, which means it equals 5. So if you would be willing to hear all of those at the December meeting, the first one that's a SLUP is Fruition, which is a food and drink establishment up at the north end of North Old Woodward, but they're not proposing alcohol. It's simply they need a SLUP because of their zoning. The second one is Tapper's Gold Exchange, which is located within the Merrillwood building on the 2nd floor. So while it's a special land use because it's a regulated use, it's within the building. Now, we haven't had one like that before. And then the third one is 219 Elm, which is, I believe that's All Seasons Phase 2.
Yep. Well, we used to meet until midnight.
Yeah, or later.
So I'm just throwing that out there.
So I'm going to recommend, a kind of a compromise from what I've heard here is that we keep the 11th as the master plan meeting. We do not schedule a meeting on the 18th in the midst of the holiday season, but we just change the rules for the 12th, and we go at it, and we put everything we can on that docket, see what we can get through before the end of the year.
You need a motion to change the
rules on the December 12th,
meeting.
11th.
So I'll move that, what date is it? December 9th?
December 9th?
I'll move that the December 9th meeting format be changed from the master plan to a regular meeting in which we can hear site plans and land use permits.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
I just had a quick question for Jana before I vote.
Well,
Jana,
hold on. Hold on, brother. Do we have a second?
I second.
I have a second by Ms. Boyce. Now, Mr. Jeffries.
Jana, is the Tappers thing, is that one of these ones that we have to consider as a pawn shop?
Sort of, sort of, yes, but it's more of a jewelry exchange as I understand it thus far.
All right. Can't imagine that goes fast, but.
No, it may not be fast.
All right.
Well, we'll work on the agenda, and if it ends with just those four and we have to wait on all seasons, we have to wait on all seasons. We'll do our best, right? Jana, you and I could talk about the agenda as we get a little closer.
Okay.
Ms. Whipple-Boyce.
Just a question about the motion that I just seconded. Do we we're going to be seeing 3 site plans, 2 of which are SLUPs, so that's 5 things on the agenda. Did we need to say something? Are we over one of what we're allowed to see, and did we need to say something specific about that?
You do not need to specifically say something because the limit is 5 in the rules of procedure, but the board had just agreed to limit it to 2 or 3 when we were doing virtual meetings, but that's not a formal rule.
Okay, just checking.
But that's a great point, Ms. Whipple-Boyce. And just as all board members, I would assume that if you vote to support this motion, you are also, agreeing with the idea of hearing more than 3 like we have done in this virtual world. Any other comments on the motion? I'll throw it to the public once. Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment on the motion? We do have one comment. There is a gentleman by the name of Mark H. Could we please unmute him? If you could say your name and address and please provide your input, please.
Hi, good evening. Mark Highland with the BezTech Companies. We currently submitted the plans for the All Seasons Birmingham 2, and I'm all for the motion. just move through the other folks quickly so we can be on that agenda.
Wonderfully self-serving, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bring a sleeping bag.
Yeah, we'll bring it back to the board. Can we please call the roll?
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kozak,
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, board. I see nothing else on the agenda. Is there any other business before we adjourn? Mr. Wade?
So I'm assuming, Jana, that starting in January, we would go back on our regular schedule, which is the first meeting in January would deal with the master plan.
Yes, I would agree. If I may, though, I do want to clarify one point because several of you mentioned that you thought the neighborhood discussion would occur on November 11th. Mr. Chairman, I was,
correct?
Pardon me?
It's Haynes Square, correct? The final mix.
That's right. That's right. Because we didn't hear it in October, we would move it next to November. I just wanted to make sure.
Haynes Square mixed-use district that we were going to hear before.
Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure everyone was clear on that.
Correct. And we are, for anybody listening, not discussing traditionally single-family neighborhoods, seams, or any other concepts of that nature.
Correct.
Any other business? Mr. Sheriff.
There's just a point of information. Google Maps is apparently updating itself because there was a little car with Google Maps written all over it and a great big giant camera on top driving around today. So look for new pictures.
Yes. Any other comments before the board? Any other business? Seeing none, I will thank you all for your service. Thank you, Jana. Thank you, Nick. All the staff back at the shop, and meeting adjourned.
Good job. Good job.
Have a good night.
You too, Jana.
Good night.